Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we proudly bring to you Mormonism Live!
Shut up and sit down.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? How are you, Bill Reel?
Well, RFM, I'll tell you this much. I think we proved that Joseph Smith was the originator of polygamy.
Well, I wanted to follow up with you on that. But first off, for our audience and those who may not have been with us last week at this time, to what are you referring, my friend?
We, 2 weeks ago, we were given a caller that didn't believe in Joseph Smith being the originator of polygamy. And I took that as a challenge. And so over the next week, we put an episode together. And sorry, I got like a gnat flying around in here. If I kill him, I could bring him back to life by giving him a priesthood blessing. But
yeah, be careful. It could be Vincent Price.
Yeah, we ended up doing an episode last week where we put up, I think, the greatest of historical documents contemporaneous to Joseph Smith's being alive there at the end and showing that he was, in fact, the mastermind behind Section 132, the practice of plural marriage, and I'll use my favorite word. We demonstrably showed that Joseph Smith is also the author of all the unhealthy behavior towards these women in Nauvoo.
It certainly seems that way to me. But can you tell our audience what's been going on since then? Because I understand that episode has caused a bit of a ripple throughout the bloggernacle.
Yeah. So in, for instance, the Facebook group Hemlock Knots, I don't know what that's about.
You don't know what that means?
I have no idea. Tell me.
Well, it's based on a saying by Joseph Smith, talking about how hard it is to get new doctrines and new ideas into the heads of these chuckle-headed Latter-day Saints. Remember, like it's like taking a wedge to a pumpkin or something to a hemlock knot. I presume that's where it's coming from.
I'm sure it is. So in these groups that are polygamy deniers, they are battling back and forth, trying to, I guess, come up with explanations for the things that we showed last week. And I really thought we tied together super well the Nauvoo High Council, Section 132, and the Nauvoo City Council minutes and what those three things mean, plus the land deeds and the affidavits from Leonard Sobey and lots of other cool people. But essentially, we've laid out the argument and we welcome somebody coming on and discussing their side if they'll be willing to handle, I think, logical, rational questions about how they deal with the evidence we presented. And
so are they lining up around the block to come on the show?
Sometimes they say they will, and then they sort of back out. And so I'm still waiting for somebody to want to sit down with us for a few hours and let us ask 4 or 5, I think, really good questions and see how they reconcile that. But anyway, we've got a great scholar on tonight.
Is that? Oh, yes, we do, don't we? I thought you were talking about me for a second.
Well, I was, but there's also another one too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's this other guy that you're talking about. Is that Dan Vogel? Can we bring Dan Vogel on, the scholar of all scholars?
Yes. Oh, goodness. Anyway, go ahead with tonight, my friend. It's enough of Hemlock Knots.
Yes. Not to be confused with Hemlock Nuts.
That too, yes. Hemlock Nuts.
I don't mean any disrespect. I don't think I've ever watched it, yes. So I don't know anything about them except I understand that they're very on the other side of this Joseph Smith practicing polygamy thing. So I don't mean to be disrespectful. I was just making a play on words is all.
Yeah. I don't think I really would love for one of those folks to come on and have this conversation. I think it deserves their rebutting sort of the evidence we put up and see if that holds up to our audience and their logic and rational thinking.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'd be very interesting because all that we're in it for is just to try and get as close as we can to the truth of what happened.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely, my friend.
All right. Well, apparently we're getting word from Maven, who is behind the scenes tonight, that someone is talking about a fellow named Jeremy Hoop has offered to come on the show about polygamy. And I don't know who Jeremy Hoop is, but when I hear the last name, I think of Hooper from the movie Jaws. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that movie. Hoopa! Hoopa!
No, I've seen Jaws. I don't remember that line though, but
if you watch it again, you'll get it.
People would expect that with me.
Well, let's get Dan on here.
Let's do it.
Can we get Dan on? Dan, how are you doing?
Here I am.
It's so
that was a great show last week, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Praise from Caesar. And here you are riding high. You have just completed your, I don't know if this is a magnum opus or if every book you do is a freaking magnum opus, but this is the magnum opus of right now. And I know we've got actually a slide. We have a slide that shows the same book, but I just want to tell you, can I tell you something? I have not read the entire book yet.
I don't blame you.
I have not read the entire book, but I've got to tell you something, Dan. I have done a lot of reading.
See, you're getting punished for not reading it.
Okay. I'll accept my punishment. I deserve it. But
we all got punished.
I want to tell you something. You are a good writer.
Oh, thanks.
How many people have talked to you about your ability to write?
You?
Just me? Because, you're a great historian, but you're also an excellent writer.
Thank you.
And I'm just saying, there are great historians and there are great writers, but rarely do those two gifts come in the form of one person like they have with you.
Well, after 35 years, you think I'd get a little bit better.
Some people do. Some people don't. And I'm glad that you are so good. This is a fantastic book. By the way, before we start, well, we've already started. Can you tell our audience, I'll tell them that the name of the book is Charisma Under Pressure. And it's Joseph Smith, American Prophet, 1831 to 1839. So that's covering the Ohio and Missouri years of early Mormonism, correct?
Yes. It's like 2 books in one.
Because of Ohio and Missouri?
Yeah. The Ohio one is like the regular size of a book. Plus, you get Missouri as a bonus.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, it approaches in totality 1,000 pages.
Well, 850, somewhere around there is the text.
Right. Well, I was counting everything.
Yeah, the index is about 50 pages, I think.
I wasn't sure if you wrote this or if Stephen King wrote it.
Oh, yeah.
But
right.
It's an amazing book. Where can people buy it? Now, I understand it goes for like $50. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, I think. And it's got really good binding. And it will last, and chock full of information,
I want to get to some of that information tonight because the task I set you was to come up with a list of things that you found perhaps the most interesting that you discovered or that are covered in your book.
Yeah.
And I'm already getting ahead of us in the slides. So if we can start with the slides, the first one there's the most important slide we'll be showing tonight.
There you are, yeah.
Okay, here's the second most.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you were trying to get us caught up. Yeah, there's the picture. I thought I was seeing my life pass before my eyes. So there's Charisma Under Pressure by Dan Vogel. Yeah. And if we can go ahead now, thank you. Yes. Now, here are a number of things that you put together that are covered in your book. And you started it with the question, did you know?
Yeah.
This could almost be like Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Yeah. Did you know? Here's some of the things like, did you know Joseph Smith's original plan was to build the New Jerusalem and its temple in Indian territory?
Can I answer that question?
Not in Independence, Missouri, but all the way into Indian territory, but things got, backfired on them and they had to change plans.
I had no idea. My answer to that question is no, I did not know that. I knew that what I thought I knew was that the plan was to have Zion established down in Jackson County over in the land like bordering the Lamanites.
That's what the Revelation says now.
You mean that's not what it said originally?
No, it said among the Lamanites, and they changed that to on the border by the Lamanites.
Oh my word, I had no idea. You see, this is why you are the preeminent historian. You know incredible things and things that are different from what I learned and I thought were accurate. So what happened? Is this tied in with the story then about how they sent missionaries among the Native Americans and the Indian agents kicked them out?
That's exactly it. And so that was the revelation that called Oliver Cowdery to the Lamanite mission, said that it shall be among the Lamanites. Zion would be among the Lamanites. So, or the city, the whatever. I don't know the exact wording in my mind right now, but they got thrown out by the Indian agent, and they snuck over there a couple of times, but luckily there was no exact location named, and until they had to call for Joseph Smith to come and point out the place of where Zion was going to be. Okay. So, Joe Smith couldn't do it from Ohio, apparently, with his gift of prophecy and seership. He had to actually go there, look around, choose some land, and point out the place. He had to be there in person. And even then, Bishop Partridge said that he thought the land wasn't all that great that was chosen. Then he and Joe Smith got in some furious argument.
And by the way, that is the context for the famous and somewhat misused revelation that contains the phrase "one mighty and strong," isn't it?
No, you tell me.
Oh, yeah, because Joseph Smith has had it with Bishop Partridge, and Joseph Smith is telling him that if you don't do things the way I'm telling you to do them, then one mighty and strong is going to come down there to Missouri and set things in order.
Oh, okay.
And of course, that expression has been used ever since to, I don't know, identify the latest Messiah of the month.
Yeah.
In Mormonism. Even though historically speaking, it involves a very certain time and place in the 1830s. And it's self-referential. The one mighty and strong was going to be Joseph Smith.
That's how I read it.
Yeah. I think that's a straightforward reading.
I don't think he would let anybody else take his place.
No, Joseph Smith isn't calling anybody else the one mighty and strong.
Right.
What's this next one you have?
The next one, did you know?
Yes. What?
W.W. Phelps's article, Free People of Color, which led to the riot and destruction of the Mormon press, was apparently a bluff that backfired.
No, all I'm familiar with is the idea that there was an article published down in Missouri called Free, and it took me forever to realize that the word free is actually a verb here. It's not an adjective. In other words, it's an exhortation to free people of color, or in other words, the slaves, right?
Well, no, it's an adjective.
Is it really?
It's describing free blacks from the north versus enslaved blacks from the south. And so the Mormons wanted Independence, Missouri in Jackson County to themselves. And they wanted all the Gentiles who wouldn't convert to get out. So the Free People of Color was an article in the Evening and Morning Star that was giving instructions on how to bring free blacks into Jackson County and telling them the proper route to take and the proper papers to have. And the people of Jackson County didn't want free blacks mixing with enslaved blacks in the same county. And so my interpretation of that was, since there aren't any black Mormons really, except maybe Elijah Abel later, there are no black Mormons that are going to be migrating to Jackson County. There isn't any. Okay. Right. So why is all these instructions appearing in the newspaper as if they're going to be coming into the county? Well, I believe W.W. Phelps was trying to say to make it inhospitable for Jackson Countyans to stay there. That he wanted them to say, oh, if they're bringing free blacks in and it's going to corrupt our enslaved blacks, we're out of here.
There goes the neighborhood.
Right. Well, so it didn't work. They didn't scare off so easily. They fought back. And
I'm going to have to check my history, my U.S. history, but I'll ask you the question, since you're the expert here. Wouldn't there have been if they had actually done this? Now, I understand you're saying it was a bluff that backfired, so there was no intention of doing it. But even if they had, wouldn't there have been a danger of any free black from the North going into a slave state?
Well, Missouri was kind of a neutral state to begin with, but at this time, well, not necessarily. If they were accompanied, and had the proper papers and stuff, and that was why W.W. Phelps was explaining how free blacks could come into the county in a safe way.
Okay. No, so I didn't know any of that, and what I did know was wrong, apparently.
But there weren't any.
No free people of color coming from the North
In our church.
And none in the church either.
In the Mormon church.
What's the next thing you have?
I'm still stuck in the mode. But the next one is Joseph Smith. Did you know Joseph Smith's effort to redeem Zion did not end with the failure of Zion's camp?
Well, no, I did not.
In 1834.
Yes, 1834. It was a huge failure on the part of Joseph Smith. My understanding is that by revelation, God said, you go, you take it back. I will fight your battles. I will go before you. I will smite those Gentiles. And it ended up being sort of given up once they got down there to Missouri. And they sort of folded when they saw the opposing forces.
Well, they didn't get the help that they thought they were going to get from the Missouri governor. And the Missouri governor said he would help bring the Mormons back to Jackson County and reclaim their property, but they couldn't keep a standing army there. The governor said he didn't have authority to do that. So that was what Zion's camp was supposed to do, is to be the standing army to be able to maintain their property rights when the state militia left.
I see, but there was no state militia ready to help them out.
The governor wouldn't even help them get back to their property, and so it would have been a bloodbath, first of all. But in some Mormons, when some of the people that went all that distance, 900 miles, they were upset that they didn't fight. they still wanted to fight, but it didn't end there. They went back to Kirtland, Ohio, and they made plans. Joe Smith had explained the failure, and they made plans to retake, to raise a larger army, to raise a larger army of like 500 instead of 205, and more money. And Joe Smith couldn't get either, actually, and it kind of fizzled out. We're going to learn a little bit about some of those steps, but the next, did you know, leads us a little closer to what we're talking about. Did you know there was a second attempt to raise funds and recruit a large army to take Zion by 11th of September 1836 that failed to get off the ground?
I had no idea about any of this. Hey, Bill,
so
I know you're being really quiet down there. I don't want to completely ignore you. Had you heard about that?
No, I had not. So, but none of that surprises me. I expect Dan Vogel, anytime he does something, for us to learn some new things. So
thanks. So, yeah, why September 11th? We'll learn why September 11th is so significant, and not just to us today.
Or to, I don't know, the Fancher Party?
Is that a significant date in that?
September 11th, 1857.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, Mountain Meadows Massacre.
Yeah. Mountain Meadows, and then September
Synchronicity.
11th, yeah. Yes.
It was a 1 in 365 chance.
All right. So, did you know Oliver Cowdery had ambitions to replace Joseph Smith as leader of the church?
This one surprised me more.
None at all outside of our phone calls, Dan. Not at all, because I just thought Oliver Cowdery, he's the second elder in the church. He was the second banana, and then he didn't like the way things were going in Missouri. He didn't like the way things were going out in the hayloft of the barn, and so he split ways with Joseph Smith and was excommunicated in 1838. Correct?
Yeah.
That's all I know. But you're saying he actually had ambitions to replace Joseph Smith as the leader of the church?
He was second elder until December 5th, 1834, when he was ordained as assistant president or co-president of the church suddenly. After all that time, and then he writes in Joseph Smith's large journal that his ordination was delayed. It was actually spoken of by the angel that ordained Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery to this lesser priesthood, supposedly in May 1829, and that it was delayed because he was busy with the printing down in Zion and stuff. But if you trace the steps, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery were together plenty of times to perform such an ordination. So it's a very suspicious explanation and kind of anachronistic for the 1829 time period in the first place. And to believe that the angel had mentioned the co-president of the church back in 1829, and it took all those years to actually ordain him to that office is not really credible. And because there's so many other, first of all, there was no president of the high priesthood, until 1831, and it wasn't mentioned anyway. And there were no counselors until 1832. And so for them to know about the president and co-president in 1829 is not really a credible claim. And anyway, so Oliver Cowdery, he gets promoted all of a sudden over Sidney Rigdon. But then so he's co-president. When Oliver Cowdery starts revealing that Joseph Smith had this affair with Fanny Alger, that would have meant that Joseph Smith could have been tried by the bishop's court at that time, and Oliver Cowdery would have been president.
Oh, okay. So are you saying that you think that was just a happy coincidence for Oliver and his ambitions, or do you think he might have made anything up in order to try and get Joseph Smith out of the way?
It was a happy coincidence. It was something that came his way, and there is other clues that Joseph Smith worried about Oliver Cowdery's ambitions, that there were two evils in him, and I have another source that you can read in the book. I'll save that for those people that read the book. That Joseph Smith was worried early on that Oliver Cowdery had ambitions of replacing him. He made a confession to Brigham Young's brother. Anyway,
Phineas?
No, the other guy.
Okay, I think I just exhausted my knowledge of the names of Brigham Young's brothers.
Yeah. Okay. So it escapes my mind right now.
Okay. So can I ask you this question, because it came up last week? There's some dispute in some window, and I'm talking about Fanny Alger and the affair right now.
Yeah.
Some window for the timing of that and when it occurred, whether it was after April of 1836, which of course is important to Mormons theologically, because that's when the sealing power was restored. Do you have any way to put a narrow window on when that would have happened?
Well, I kind of agree with Brian Hales somewhat on this, because it seems we don't know the date that it occurred, but I believe that when it started being revealed by Cowdery was probably pretty close to the time that it happened, not years apart.
Mm-hmm.
So that would put it probably in 1836.
Before or after April?
I think I time it for that. I don't give a date for when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
I only talk about when it started being discussed publicly. Oliver Cowdery's bringing it up in Missouri in the High Council, and there's a big dispute between Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith.
Because it happened up in Ohio, right?
Yes.
The affair itself?
Yeah.
How did Oliver Cowdery find out about this?
He was in Ohio at the time.
Oh, he was in Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how he found out about it?
I think he learned it from Emma when Emma was like throwing Fanny out, and there was a big hubbub about it. And I think Joseph Smith went to Oliver Cowdery for help with Emma to get over the bump.
Mm-hmm. Or the scrape.
Yeah, the scrape.
I've got another question for you, Dan. And I apologize for doing this, but based on our phone conversations, which I enjoy very much and I really appreciate them, is it your position that to the extent that Joseph Smith was, I don't know, manufacturing stories maybe retroactively about angels and appearing and what they said and what they didn't say, that Oliver Cowdery was to some extent involved in this manufacturing of history?
Yes.
The ruse.
Well, so the first announcement of the angelic ordinations was in the letter that Oliver Cowdery sent to W.W. Phelps from Ohio to Missouri, telling this is the first public discussion of an angel that ordained Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith in May 1829. Cowdery does not name the angel in this letter, but it's to this lesser priesthood, and he is writing it to the Missouri leaders. W.W. Phelps is one of them, in order to increase their faith. And so I believe this is September 1834, and then the following December is when he's ordained a co-president. And then Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery work very closely together for the next year before they have their falling out.
Do you see a potential quid pro quo then?
Yeah.
And Oliver Cowdery's helping to support Joseph Smith's rewriting of history with the angels appearing in 1829 and his getting a bump in, I don't know, what would you call it when you get a promotion?
Yeah.
So he could be
something like that. It appears to be, to me, to be something like a quid pro quo situation, and Cowdery is helping Joseph Smith to keep the church from splintering, to keep the Missouri church from splintering off, because they're very upset at this time. This is in September 1834, is right after they come back from Zion's camp.
Right.
And
well, it strikes me that if this is the case, and if Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery are to some very, very important depths in cahoots with each other, that from Joseph Smith's perspective, he's got to treat Oliver Cowdery with kid gloves, don't you think?
Yes, there is a power struggle of a sort, but Joseph Smith wins.
How does he win?
By getting Oliver Cowdery excommunicated.
Okay.
What stops Cowdery from speaking up at that point, right? Like if he's
he was speaking up.
Yeah, but it seems from the evidence that Cowdery is agreeing to tell the narrative that Joseph Smith wants to tell. Meanwhile, he would have firsthand experience knowing that that's not accurate. Book of Mormon translation to some extent, priesthood restoration to another. Why not speak out? Why not if you're going to excommunicate,
you mean say
fine.
that he lied? I lied.
Spill the beans.
He believes in the project. He believes in the church. He believes that it needs to be saved.
Okay. And I'm sorry, because I know I'm getting you off on all these different subjects that we hadn't talked about getting into, but this list of did you know brings them to my mind. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Unless you had anything else you wanted to say about that.
Okay. So if you want more details, read the book.
That's right. Please grab the book.
Did you know Sidney Rigdon had
sorry.
threatened...
When you said next one, I thought you meant slide. Go ahead, my friend.
Oh. Did you know Sidney Rigdon had threatened extermination in a 4th of July 1838 speech before Governor Boggs issued his infamous extermination order?
I finally get to say yes. I finally get to say yes. And also on the last one as well. But it hasn't been that long that I have known about it. It's not like I learned about it in Sunday school or by reading the correlated curriculum.
Right.
It focuses on just the horrible nature of this extermination order issued by Governor Boggs of Missouri, but no mention in correlated materials about a prior, it's not an order because he's not a governor, but a threat, let's say a threat of extermination to the Missourians if they don't leave the Mormons alone and get in line with the Mormon Project. And I remember learning about that and just going, well, wait a second, this kind of puts a different light on the subsequent extermination order. It's more in retaliation, perhaps, for this than it is just coming out of nowhere and saying, all the Mormons either leave this state by such and such a date or they will be exterminated.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that? What was that, July 4th, 1838?
July 4th. Yeah. Sidney Rigdon's oration. And they actually published it in a pamphlet form.
Oh, my gosh.
Where it's calling out this extermination. If you attack us, we will, go to the ends of the earth to avenge you, and it would be a bloodbath. So it was leave us alone or else, And
that's July 4th of 1838. So it's what? Just the following October when Governor Boggs issues the extermination order, right?
Yeah.
So July, August, September, October, 3 months later. It's not like it's separated in time by that much either.
No.
And then the last one on your list? Oh, I'm sorry.
So the last one is, did you know Mormon vigilantes under Joseph Smith's command attacked, looted, burned homes and businesses in Daviess County? And that's why he was being tried.
Okay, well, this answer is yes, but it came in stages to me. The first was to find out that Mormon vigilantes attacked, looted, and burned homes and businesses, which thing was hard for me to get my head around because I had understood that they were the constant, clean-handed victims in all of this who never did anything wrong, but were still set upon by these horrible Missourians. So that was the first thing I had to learn, which all of a sudden changed things dramatically from my viewpoint. But then it was still hidden that it was at Joseph Smith's command. And he was in charge of this. Now, of course, you would think, of course, he's in charge of this. And yet there's been a decided attempt to try and shield him from accountability for this and putting it off on some fellow named, I think, Samson...
Avard, yeah.
Samson Avard.
Avard, I don't know.
Yeah, as the head of the Danites.
Yeah.
And the one who was off doing his own thing. It's like those rogue artists that the church has painting pictures of the translation process for publication in the Ensign. And when it comes to light that that's not the way that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon, the church leaders are going, I don't know how those pictures got into the Ensign. I mean, it's those artists. They're the ones who are, painting this crazy stuff. We didn't ask them to do that. And so it's like, why are the Mormons burning and pillaging? And where's Joseph Smith in this? And then, we'll get him out of the room and put it all on this Samson Avard person. At least that's the apologetics that I read. But then even more recently, and I'm sure it's in your book, and I read about some of it also in Cheryl Bruno's book, and with Nick Latursky, and another fellow whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Is Schwick.
Oh yeah.
I forget his
I
Joe.
apologize.
Joe.
Right, about
Joseph Swick.
Yeah,
That's
about the Masonry.
Yeah.
And Mormonism. And in there, it had interesting, fascinating documentation about Joseph Smith being behind it.
Yeah.
Which makes absolute sense. Of course he was behind it. Now
of course.
that I don't have a dog in this
he was
fight.
actually the president, or the what is it? Anyway, he was the leader of the War Department of the church.
The church had a War Department?
Yes. From Zion's Camp time.
Wow. Just like the United States.
And a general, Lyman White was the general, but he was the commander-in-chief of the War Department of the church.
Wow.
And in those raids, there were a lot of Danites, former Danites, or Danites that merged with the other militia men of Caldwell County. Anyway, so that gives, I hope, a little bit of interest in the book. People might want to read more details on all these matters and more.
Where should they go to buy it?
Oh, well, Amazon is my favorite place. Benchmark Books is another favorite place. If you live in Salt Lake City, especially, you can go right down and get it.
Well, I certainly want to encourage our audience to get this book. It is a landmark publication. It's just absolutely amazing what I've read and the reviews I've read about it. By the way, I also want to give the secret sign of the Danites here in honor of them, which I learned from Cheryl's book. Right there, right? There it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's the secret sign. Are you a Danite? If you are, give me the secret sign. I guess I'm the only one here.
Yep.
Okay, so next, we're going to go on to now this very fascinating part, and you put this in here at my special request.
Yes.
Because a number of months ago, it could have even been as much as a year ago, you had talked to me about this 5-year prophecy.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard about a 5-year prophecy. I heard about an 85-year prophecy. In other words, Joseph Smith being 85 years old, and Jesus is going to come by then. Right. Or not before then, or whatever it was. I think it actually was, he will come in 85 years, and that got modified too. Or in 1890. But this 5-year prophecy, can you tell us about the 5-year prophecy?
Yeah, well, so Joseph Smith had to explain the failure of Zion's camp and the delay, and everybody's really anxious, to get to Zion and for safety, because the Holocaust is coming, the end of the world's coming, and everybody feels very anxious to go. And Joseph Smith is tapping into all of that anxiety. It's kind of already there before he comes on the scene, because the 19th century America is very millenarian, and there's lots of like William Miller and others that are predicting the end of the world. And it seems like since Andrew Jackson got into office, that there's this secret combination taking over the government, and it's the experiment is coming to an end. And so it seems like it's very close, and a lot of Mormons, early Mormons like Martin Harris, are predicting Jackson would be the last president. And so that was in 1831. We'll get to that original prophecy, but we'll read the September 11th, 1836, timetable statement. And this is a Joseph Smith letter to Lyman White down in Missouri, 16th of August, 1834, from Joseph Smith's letter book.
That's Orange White's father. I know that.
Orange White. Yeah.
Yeah. Orange White.
He can't make up his
mind.
Texas.
So Joseph Smith writes, use every effort to prevail. This is 1834, August. This is after his return from Zion's camp. Use every effort to prevail on the churches to gather to those regions and situate themselves to be in readiness to move to Jackson County in 2 years from the 11th of September next, which is the appointed time for the redemption of Zion. Now, my beloved brethren, you will learn by this, we have a great work to do and but little time to do it in. And if we don't exert ourselves in the utmost, to the utmost in gathering up the strength of the Lord's house, which is a phrase from the Revelations, that this thing may be accomplished, behold, there remaineth a scourge for the church. So, where did this September 11th thing come from? Right?
Right. He's talking about it as if it's already understood.
Yeah, and it's the appointed time for the redemption of Zion, you know. Well, so the next slide will tell us that on September 11th, 1831, Joseph Smith dictated a revelation that was meant to ease the anxieties of people wanting to go to Zion. And there was too many people going all at once, and Joseph Smith wanted a slower, more orderly gathering, because they were having difficulty in Missouri accommodating everybody that was all of a sudden appearing there. So the revelation, this is from the Revelation book number 1. For I, the Lord, willeth to retain a stronghold in the land of Kirtland for the space of 5 years, in the which I will not overthrow the wicked, that thereby I may save some. And after that day, I, the Lord, will not hold any guilty that shall go with open hearts up to the land of Zion. Now, so he's not going to destroy the wicked. So we have 5 years, right? So don't get so anxious. And so Joseph Smith turns this, he more or less misinterprets his own revelation and turns it into, hey, this is actually a prediction to the day. You know, there's no intent in the original dictation of this revelation for this to become a prophecy of when Zion will be restored. But Joseph Smith interprets it that way.
Well, doesn't it have to almost be that way? Because I know in 1831 that they haven't run into all the problems that they run into in Jackson County, Missouri, which mainly means getting tossed out. And I think that was 1833, right?
So the press was destroyed in July 1833, and they were out in November, December of the same year.
Into another county, of course, or unincorporated, or
Clay County. Most of them, they went in all directions, but most of them went north to Clay County.
Right. So, having received this revelation in 1831, 2 years before that happening, I could see how Joseph Smith would now, under the circumstances that ended up happening and then being tossed out, look at this. I mean, how else do you look at this but a revelation that in 5 years from the date it's given, September 11th, 1836, that if in those 5 years, or after those 5 years are over, that it's going to be fine. The wicked will be, what is it? I will not overthrow the wicked in those 5 years. That after that time, he will overthrow the wicked, and then everybody can go back to Jackson County and reclaim their place.
Can I just say, too, I mean, we grew up with a narrative of the fulfilled prophecies of Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Civil War prophecy is the only one I can remember. I'm sure there are others, and I remember some of them, they needed some conjecture and allowances to make work. But somebody ought to, Dan, write a book on the failed prophecies of Joseph Smith. Because
that's
I feel
what
like
this book's about.
Yeah, they would be just as plentiful as the fulfilled ones. This is what the book does.
Yeah, the book, the Charisma Under Pressure, is the unfulfilled prophecy creates part of this pressure, and Joseph Smith's major prophecy, Zion, the major purposes of his mission failed. You know, it's a total failure, and but how does he overcome this failure is what the book is about. Also, really how he overcomes it.
Isn't it amazing that not just that Mormonism thrived after this, but that it even survived? I mean, how does a small religious group that's based upon the prophetic charisma of its leader survive when time after time after time the revelations and prophecies he claims to receive from God end up not panning out? And actually, that's a nice word for it, ending in disaster.
Yeah, one thing after another, one failed project after another. And the introduction, I talk about charisma and the social construction of charisma and how it's a symbiosis and an illusion that is created between the follower and the leader. And the followers are getting something out of it. And Joseph Smith very cleverly pulled them into the institution. He built the institution. So one of the responses to failure is to divert attention away, explain delay, but then start focusing on kingdom building and get people involved with that. Plus, he right after the failure of Zion's camp, he expands the hierarchy. He has he organizes the 12 apostles and the 70, and he pulls some of these people in to where they're invested in the institution. So they have a lot to lose and they don't want him to fail. So one of the things, I mean, this is a pattern of Joseph Smith's whole life. When he was a money digger, he never came up with any treasures either. But you still have people like Josiah Stoll at the 1826 trial testifying that he believes that Joseph Smith has the gift anyway, you know. And so that's what he learned, how to do that, how to look like a success when you're failing all over the place.
Dan, can I ask you a question? This is a fantastic revelation that Joseph Smith received. Where do I find that in the Doctrine and Covenants?
Section 64, verse 21.
Is this language there?
Why does this one get left off?
What do you mean?
So this is in the D&C?
It's there. I'm quoting the manuscript though, because I just took it out of my book
right now. Okay.
In my book, I used all the manuscripts all the time.
The prophecy on our screen is in the current Doctrine and Covenants?
Yeah.
So it's 64. Was it 21?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it here. 64. Revelation given through Joseph Smith, the prophet, to the elders of the church at Kirtland, Ohio, September 11th, 1831. 21 says, is it 21?
Yeah.
Let me go back here and just check it out.
Am I wrong?
64:21.
Did I put the wrong one?
It says. Oh, yeah. I will not. It starts with something different. I will not that my servant Frederick G. Williams should sell his farm, for I, the Lord, will to retain a stronghold in the land of Kirtland for the space of 5 years, in the which I will not overthrow the wicked, that thereby I may save some. Okay, so how come in the at least 10 times I've read the Doctrine and Covenants, I never saw this, Dan?
Well, you wouldn't read it as a prophecy unless you knew the context that Joseph Smith later put it into. You know, you would just read that, 5 years, and we know they were there for 8 years, you know, and the thing you have to consider is that at the same time, 1833, they're starting construction of the Kirtland Temple. So I think they're planning on staying a little longer than 5 years.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, verse 22 goes on and states what is next in your quote. And after that day, I, the Lord, will not hold any guilty that shall go with an open heart up to the land of Zion, for I, the Lord, require the hearts of the children of men. Well, that sounds kind of gruesome.
You could put your apologist hat on and you could say that in 5 years was 1836. 1836 is the Kirtland Bank failure, correct?
37,
No.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it opened in January.
But there's something else
November.
that you're very close to hitting on.
Try again, Bill.
I don't know. What's 1836 that went bad that that half the members left over? Because what I was going to do is say that if the Kirtland Safety Society Bank fails, the Lord is weeding out the chaff from the wheat, and the chaff now leave the church, and now you have a fulfilled prophecy.
Well, the Kirtland Safety Society, or bank it was at first, was designed to raise money for the redemption of Zion.
Yeah, but by losing a ton of members, you could make the argument that that's how God overthrew the wicked.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, see how apologetics
There's
work,
always
Dan?
a way. There's always
There
a
is
way.
always a loophole.
What is it that happened, Dan?
Okay, well, okay.
I mean, in 1836.
Yeah, note. Joseph Smith visited Salem, Massachusetts in early August 1836, 1 month before the due date. 1 month before the due date.
And he was there looking for money, right?
In search of buried treasure for the benefit of Zion.
And so was the benefit to use the money to help raise the army to go and take it back by force by the appointed day of September 11th, 1836?
Yeah.
Gave him the hope that if he sent people to a house in Salem, Massachusetts, he'd actually find money to pay the... In other words, it seems like on the front end, Joseph would know this is not going to go the way he wishes it could.
Well, no, they actually had a treasure map, or a Burgess, who was that's all we know is his last name, a member that had told people in Kirtland about a house in Salem that in the basement there was a treasure hidden from a former inhabitant of that house, I would think. And so it wasn't like a stone gazing, money digging kind of venture. It was more of we heard that there's supposed to be a treasure here, and Joe Smith believed he had the inside information on it. And he and the presidency actually went there in hopes of actually finding some money and solving a lot of their debt problems, and probably helping with the retaking of Zion.
And first, they've got to walk up and down every street of Salem and find the house.
Because
they just had a description of it, right? Not an address.
Right. Well, the Burgess guy showed up there in Salem, and from a letter Joe Smith wrote to Emma, sounds like he gave them information, and they finally located the house. And he wrote Emma and said it's going to take a little while longer to kind of get into that basement without people being suspicious, like buying the house or renting the house to get into it. So,
strangely and coincidentally, this sounds a lot like the plot of the movie Gaslight, except there it was in the attic, which is where we get the phrase gaslighting.
Did Joseph lack the ability to discern that this treasure wasn't real? Just curious.
Yes.
I bet it was there. It was totally
why did he
there.
Even
they just
go,
couldn't
why did
find
he go
it
that
they
far?
had to buy the house. They had to buy the house to be able to dig. And how do you dig in the basement of somebody else's house without raising suspicion?
Not enough space to draw your magic circles right.
They need Tom Cruise to do some kind of Mission Impossible thing on that.
So what the point here is that there was a timetable for redeeming Zion by 1836, September 11th, 1836.
So what you're telling me, Dan, what you're telling me is that in the Revelation that was published elsewhere, that when it says that the temple is going to be built in Jackson County in that generation, it really meant in that generation.
Yes.
It was really going to happen soon.
In that saying it was this generation was a delay already. It was an excuse. And that Revelation section 84 is excusing the Mormons from the commandment to build the temple because they had gone with all their might to try to fulfill the commandment.
Yes.
But the prophecy was still in force.
Mm-hmm.
But not the commandment to build it immediately. And they drew up plans. They were oblivious to when they were up there in Kirtland. they were oblivious to the fact that the Mormons had gotten kicked out of the county, and they just kept on planning a city and a temple and mailing it to them. And so, yeah, Joseph Smith didn't know about all of that going on either. So anyway, the next slide is only a story about where Bishop Partridge said they're sitting around the table eating dinner, and Partridge observed Bishop Whitney observed to Bishop Partridge that the thought occurred in his mind that perhaps in about 1 year from this time we might be seated together around a table on the land of Zion. So this is very serious to them, that was a fixed kind of date to them.
Dan, isn't that the same idea as next year in Jerusalem?
No.
It's not?
Well, you have a date, like September 11th?
But no, just the ancient saying, the last statement of the Seder.
Yeah.
Since time immemorial, way before 1947, when they did not have a homeland, next year in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That next year we'll be having this meal in Jerusalem with this idea of hope that they will be able to redeem the land which God gave them, but which, because of circumstances beyond their control, they've been forced off of.
Yeah. Well, these guys actually were looking forward to the next year because of the prophecy.
Right.
I mean, but the story you're telling us could be told every year for now on.
Yeah, and it was. And it still is, but with a different meaning behind it now that there is actually a land that they have as their home. But now my wife.
So they're very disappointed when it doesn't happen. And there's a letter Parley P. Pratt wrote from England to Joseph Smith in Nauvoo in 1840 saying, when is it going to happen? I mean,
What was the rest of this? Was this the second paragraph part of the same
Well,
entry?
it's just Emma Smith just repeats what they said.
I see.
Yeah,
and wasn't
she'll
this
be
the
able
same
to serve them in Zion.
Wasn't this the same kind of hope or belief or expectation that the saints in Utah had as 1890 approached? That they would be returning back to Jackson County to reclaim it with the divine help of the Lord?
Yes. Well, that's that 85-year prediction that you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. So Joseph Smith would have been 85, which is going to be December 23rd of 1890. So instead of getting back to Jackson County, they get a manifesto.
Yeah.
Mormonism, where nothing happens the way they say it will.
Isn't it amazing?
And they just keep going because the institution, Mormons are attached to the institution, and it means a lot to them, and so that failure doesn't really faze them as much as maybe it should.
Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses got over Jesus not coming back in 1914 too.
Yeah.
And 1977 again or something.
Yeah, well, so in the introduction, I talked about the 4 things that millenarian groups do when inevitably failure happens. And, like they focus on institution building. They have excuses for the failure. It goes on. So if you want the details, get the book.
Get the book. Go to Amazon today. Buy this book.
So now we're going to talk about something that's kind of fun for me because I just posted a video on YouTube about these magic parchments that were handed down in Hiram Smith's family. And I decided since we now had pretty good photographs of these documents, actually they're the originals that Mike Quinn published in his book, Mormonism and the Magic Worldview, in black and white. And these are the color photographs of those. So now that we can see them a little more clearly, see here that here's the parchments right here, and the pouch. And there's 3 parchments. You can see, we'll look at them a little closer, and 1 pouch, and 2 of them fold up and fit into that 4 by 4 inch pouch. So they must be,
so they're 8 by
8 by 8.
We have arrived at the answer.
Yeah, that we were trying to figure out. So, and then that third one at the bottom there was folded up many more times, and is more damaged, and the ink is really light on that one because someone attempted to clean it with turpentine.
Isn't it like that? Was it a Da Vinci painting or some kind of famous painting that someone decided to try and clean with turpentine?
Yeah, and a match. And no, so yeah, the it had soot on it, and the Eldridge G. Smith actually is the one that tried to clean it with turpentine and then stopped. But so the ink is quite faded, but not unreadable.
Dan,
did
Eldridge G. Smith live to be 106 years old?
I don't know. Did he?
It says 1907 to 2013.
He was quite old.
Yeah, I knew he was up there, but my God.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're looking at the dates. Sorry.
It could be 106, could be 105.
It is. Wikipedia does say January of 1907 to April of 2013. So 106, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
Too
bad he never got to keep his keys.
No, he was stripped of them. He was defrocked.
So this family tradition is that it was handed down that these were together with Hiram Smith's effects. So his clothes, martyrdom clothes, Lucy Smith's milk stool, Alvin Smith's drawing table, drafting table,
Dan, for those in our audience who don't know about the Parchments, can you give us a thumbnail sketch as to what their purpose is?
These, so the 2 main ones are folded up and put into this parchment. So go to the next slide. Okay. And there, that Joseph Smith electronic image shows the pouch on his chest. And you wear that, and you can. There are 2 main purposes. One is to, call evil spirits to appear, invocate evil spirits, or to protect you from evil spirits.
Are they to summon evil spirits or good spirits?
Good spirits, sorry.
Okay, and protect against evil spirits.
And protect against evil spirits.
Okay.
But they would be different kinds. This is an amulet pouch. You remember Joseph Smith's seer stone there in his hand came with a little leather pouch, right. Little tiny bag, and that would be an amulet bag. And all sorts of cultures throughout history have used the similar type pouches that fit on the chest like that. And also you can put stones in them. You can put herbs in them, crystals, all sorts of things. There's voodoo bags. There's all sorts of names for these amulet bags. And that's one of them right there. It's a leather pouch, and those laymen fit in there and fit on the chest like that.
Now you just use a technical term, layman.
Oh, yeah.
Could you explain that for the layman?
Lawman is really the pronunciation for Latin, and Latin it means plate. Like laminate, or is kind of a word that comes from it. There's a lot of medical terms that use lawman.
Would Joseph have known that that's what it was called? In other words, my brain automatically goes to a character in the Book of Mormon named Layman.
Well, Yeah,
the bag is connected to treasure digging, and he knows that it's called that. It seems like that would be a much more plausible source than an ancient character on plates translated to English that turned out to be a ton of 19th century material.
Well, I don't know, but how they did use that term, but I don't know if they pronounced it lawman, like from Latin, or layman, like a lot of Mormons have become in the habit of saying layman.
Lumen, like
so I
William
say
Walters.
layman. So at any rate, we can go to the next slide. Here's our parchments. So the first one over here is the holiness to the Lord. It's the most ornate. It's has a lot of gold painting on it.
Why
a lot
is it
of
called
symbols.
Holiness to the Lord?
Because around the sides and the top, it says holiness to the Lord.
Okay. So
on
this
the
is just
margin.
Is this just what historians have called it for ease and reference?
Yes.
Okay.
Holiness to the Lord. The other one, St. Peter bind them, because it starts out with St. Peter bind them. The holiness to the Lord one, I believe, was used to protect against evil spirits, not to summon good spirits.
Okay. And St. Peter bind them, is that to protect you against evil spirits as well? Is that what's being bound?
It's to protect against thieves,
Okay,
for the most part,
thieves.
or even human persecutors. People that want it. We'll read the text of it later. It's to keep you from being attacked, or it invokes the image of being burned at the stake. Kind of protect me against evil doers. It says, and the back. The back is the bottom. Right below is what the back looks like.
Okay, because I didn't know before this there was writing on the back of it as well.
Yeah, in the four corners it says, "Bind evildoers from me," something like that. And then the third one is Jehovah, 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 because it repeats Jehovah 3 times on it. Since you can't read it, the one below is a reproduction, carefully reproduced by Mark Elwood, the artist, who gave me this shirt, by the way. See?
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yes. Mark Elwood is the author of Joe Smith the Glass Looker, or I think it just says Glass Looker, the Glass Looker.
Yeah, we had him on the show. It's wonderful. It's an illustrated, like, graphic novel of the early years of Joseph Smith, and I think he has a sequel out too.
Yeah, he has another volume.
So if I understand this correctly, Dan, we've got Holiness to the Lord, which apparently is written only on one side, so we only have one picture of that.
I haven't seen the other side.
Then we've got St. Peter bind them, and then below that we have the other side of it.
The other side, and that's for against thieves.
Yes.
And the third one is to protect your home against evil spirits.
Yes, and that one, that's the Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah one. And every time I say that, I have to laugh because I keep thinking of a Monty Python sketch. Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah.
Yeah, and I watched that because of you. And that's exactly how they say it. That's exactly how they say it. Yes.
But below that, on the Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah one, that's not the opposite side. That's the same side, but it's reproduced by an artist to try and make it something that's clear, because somebody had tried to wipe the soot off of it and had pretty much almost completely erased what was there originally.
Right. And you can still read it. That he wrote it there. And we do know what the words are supposed to say for the most part. And we'll see that a little bit later too. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. That's our Holiness to the Lord parchment, or lawman. So you see around the 3 sides is Holiness to the Lord, and on the bottom, written 3 times, is the tetragrammaton, which is the YHWH for Yahweh,
So it's saying Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah again,
right.
just in Hebrew.
Uh-huh. Then we have in the smack dab in the center is a 12-pointed star of Raphael.
Raphael. Who the heck is Raphael, Dan?
The angel Raphael. Joe Smith mentioned in, I think, 1842 letter. The voice of Raphael, but we don't know when this voice ever happened.
And it's interesting to me that there's nothing in church history. You correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert. There's nothing in church history in the documents we have that mentions anything about a Raphael until all of a sudden, 1842, Joseph Smith is sort of recapping the highlights of the Restoration. And with all these other things that he talks about that we have heard about, like Moroni and these different things, he talks about Raphael. The angel
Gabriel.
Raphael appearing in as some part, and Gabriel too, right? As some part of this restoration where we don't know what he's talking about,
right?
But there's only one place that we can pinpoint, and it's this parchment. Is that right?
Yeah, and so, this Raphael appears prominently in the center, so he's a very important part of it. We'll see a little bit later more about what that little 12-pointed star is all about. Then, so the layout of this is in the four corners, there's various symbols. And in the middle, there's that main symbol. And then there's two smaller ones that looks like a Maltese cross over there on the left. And on the very bottom, it looks like a bird, and above that it says IHS. Then, and also notice on the the sides and the top, underneath holiness to the Lord, are some strange looking characters.
And they're all the same, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all the same. And nobody knows what they are. Nobody's been able to find them until now. We have a kind of a better idea of what they are. And then we'll talk about that. And then in between all the spaces, there's this gold paint, various astrological symbols we'll look at also as we go.
Dan, I apologize for interrupting. Is it really gold or is it just gold-colored paint?
I don't know. I've never seen the original, but
because if it's real
probably
gold,
wouldn't know anyway.
It's starting to get kind of pricey. This is something that would be expensive.
Yeah, you wonder if it's gold leaf. You mean? I don't know. I don't know what else would be gold color anyway. But
Tembaga.
It's Tembaga. All right, so let's go to the next one. We'll try to go a little faster here.
Is that the one you want?
Yeah. So these are our key occult books here, There's Cornelius Agrippa, and the English version of that, 1651, but originally in Latin, 1533, and it had a big influence on subsequent books. And the next important book
by the way, Dan, so you know, a lot of people will be hearing this on audio only.
Yes.
So if you can read the titles of the books too, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. 3 books of occult philosophy written by Henry Cornelius Agrippa of Nettesheim, or whatever. And then the next one is Discovery of Witchcraft. And, this title goes on for like 5 paragraphs, so I won't bother reading that.
Yeah, just the main title is fine.
The Discovery of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott, 1584, has a lot of magic symbols and things, as we'll see, in it, even though his book was an expose of magic. The next one is I can't read it.
New and Complete Illustrations of the Occult Sciences?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Ebenezer Scott, 1784. And then finally, the Magus, which is a really main text because it's so close to Joseph's time. Francis Barrett, 1801.
Right, and Bill was showing us a book that I think might have been the Magus.
So I've got a copy.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and, see, that's one of the spirits.
It tells you how to consecrate oil. It tells you how to do all the magic circle stuff. There's certainly connections.
How do you consecrate oil, Bill?
Oh, I'd have to go back, and I just saw it, but I'll have to go back and find it again.
I'm just wondering if there's anything that might sound familiar to me.
No?
Probably not.
Okay, but you got to consecrate oil. You just can't just be using oil willy-nilly. It's got to be
Right,
consecrated.
exactly.
Lots of cool stuff in there.
Oh my gosh.
Lots of magic spell stuff.
So we'll be talking about it because some of the symbols that are on the parchments are in that book.
Right. So you got 4 books, and the reason you're focusing on these 4 books is because they are likely sources for symbols and stuff that's on the parchments, right?
Yeah. So there's one of those circles that were on the holiness to the Lord and Jehovah. So this circle is the power of it is whoso beareth this sign about him, all spirits shall do him homage. So that sounds like an important thing.
Yeah.
To rule over the spirits. And like I said, it's for protection. The overall message of the holiness to the Lord parchment is for protection against evil spirits. So you can see this is a little bit of what Quinn had published here. You'll see that arrow pointing to that little boxy shaped thing, and you compare it to Scott and Sibley's books, and you can see that it's closer to Sibley's 1800. Well, I'm using the 1807 edition. Sibley's book, which was first published in 1784. Excuse me. So you can see. So Quinn suggested that could be a source, that whoever made the parchment, even and I caution that I don't think whoever made the parchment necessarily copied it directly out of this book. It could have been copied out of a grimoire, which is a collection of symbols, or maybe another parchment was similar to it. It doesn't mean that the creator of the holiness to the Lord layman was the one that copied it from the book. That's kind of an assumption that I think, if you look at these really carefully, you can see that there's variation even from Sibley's book. Okay, next one. So in this wheel, I call it a wheel. This one is, whoso beareth this sign need fear no foe. And then at the bottom is one of Sibley added, I believe it's Sibley, but fear God. So you can see the arrows here point to variations, and again, Sibley's is closer. And Quinn thought that was in evidence. So he concluded that the holiness to the Lord layman had to be created after Sibley's book had been published.
In 1807?
No, the earliest would have been 1784.
Okay.
I'm using the 1807 edition.
Okay.
Okay, next. Okay, here. So see that egg-shaped, for the longest time we just saw this egg-shaped thing. And with this omega and agla. And agla is an AGLA stands, it's I didn't write it out, but I forget what it stood for. It's some Latin phrase or Hebrew phrase, excuse me. So Quinn had found in the British Museum that symbol and an explanation of what it meant. So then I found in a published source called The Astrologer of the 19th Century, written by and published by Robert Cross Smith in 1825. And there's on the shield of that warrior, there is that symbol and the same shape. So now it makes sense of why we're looking at around this egg kind of shape thing. It's supposed to be a shield for protection.
And what
And
is it that symbol means?
he that beareth this sign about him shall be holpen or helped in every need or necessity. Ancient manuscript. And that's a quote from that book, the 1825 book. And it says ancient manuscript. Well, it turns out that quote is from the thing that Quinn found in the British Museum in the middle there. Right underneath it in the original manuscript are those words. So the guy Robert Smith in the 1825 book got his idea for this shield from that manuscript. So it would seem that it would date the Holiness to the Lord parchment to after 1825.
Right. And can you tell us about the shield and the shading?
Yeah, so next slide. There's a close-up. So there's the shield. And if you look really close, you can see these faint lines. And for the longest time, we didn't know what that was. What is that? Well, if you look on the shield in the printed version, it's probably emulating that shading. So you think it came from the book. Now, if you look at that R shaped on the shield, this kind of R shaped at the bottom, and then on the Holiness to the Lord version, it's kind of messed up.
Yeah, I don't see it there.
It's there, but it's kind of twisted sideways.
Okay.
So that's why I say I don't think they copied it directly from the books.
Okay.
That it's probably a copy of a copy of a copy kind of situation going on here, where it has been changed, altered by various different artists.
And so,
but we might find out more later. It might make more sense when we find more information.
All of these so far seem to have the meaning of triumphing over foes, whether they be spirits or whether they be people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So let's go to the next one. Now this I call asymmetrical pentagram or star. Yeah. And you can see how on the Holiness to the Lord kind of if you compare it with Sibley on the far right, it's a little messed up. But the one in the middle, which comes from the St. Peter bind them, is pretty close.
Yes.
And only the Holiness to the Lord writes Adonai in the center.
Mm-hmm.
The other two are blank. And around it is tetragrammaton, is what is in little pieces. Tetragrammaton, which is it's referring to the YHWH, but in magic lore, tetragrammaton actually becomes a name.
Oh, the word tetragrammaton becomes
a holy name. Yeah.
Even though it's the anglicized version of the name that's applied to the 4 Hebrew letters, which give the Jehovah name, the one that is the most sacred name and not even to be spoken.
So it's tetragrammaton, it's like is a description of the YHWH for the 4 consonants.
And in the middle of the Holiness to the Lord pentagram. Yeah. That's the one that has Adonai. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you explain Adonai?
One. It's gonna be in the center of the 12-pointed star as well. And that's one of the most holiest in the magic lore, the most holiest of all names.
So you've got Adonai, which is a name for Lord, correct?
Yes.
And it's in the middle
That's what they use as Lord, yes.
Okay. And it's in the middle of a I'm saying a pentacle or a pentagram that has in the other parts tetragrammaton, which is also a holy name.
Yes.
So is this being used in some way to imbue the parchment with holiness? What's going on here?
No certain explanation, but yeah, it's a holy name, and they use these holy names and various other names for various different reasons. And each planet, you'll find out, each planet of the 7 planets has holy names attached to it. And Adonai, Adonai is a holy name attached to Mars.
Okay. So at the time, there's 7 planets, including the sun and the moon, right?
Yes, exactly.
Sun
yes.
and moon, and it lines right up with 7 angels and all these other important things about
7 angels, 7 spirits, 7 intelligences.
And so that goes out to Saturn, right? Because Uranus hadn't been discovered yet.
You're telling me.
And when and Uranus messed everything up.
Hold on.
As far as the number 7 goes, I mean.
In order to avoid the jokes, they now call it Uranus.
Yeah, no joke there.
Hold on.
It's kind of like a no-win situation for Uranus. It's the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah.
You know what
that
is?
one I know from.
You know what the Kobayashi Maru is, don't you?
No.
know?
From you. Yeah.
It's a no-win situation. I don't believe in a no-win scenario.
Yeah. So you
Zero
rewrite the program.
sumness.
So have we given you enough time to find what it is you're looking for now, Dan?
Oh, I lost my picture. I accidentally hit my mouse. Okay, so next slide. There's that 12-pointed star, and on the right is Barrett, 1801 book. It's the only book that I could ever find. I don't think there is another one that has the Raphael star in it.
And
So
it's
you
right in
see
the
it.
middle.
And it's right in the middle, and it says Raphael on the Holiness to the Lord one as well. And then it has other Hebrew words around it in those little compartments.
Right.
It has Adonai in the middle, right below Raphael.
Okay.
But we'll see what those words mean around this in the compartments.
What's the word below Raphael?
It's
Adonai. It's in Hebrew.
Raphael is the only word in that 12-pointed star on the Holiness to the Lord. I believe it's the only word that's written in English.
Yes.
Or is Adonai written in English too, Dan?
No.
Okay, it's written in Hebrew.
It's written in Hebrew.
Because these words have really similar words in the Book of Mormon. You know, Ladonai, Lamoni, Gidgadonai. You know, there's these kinds of. Anyway, it just strikes me as being sort of similar. Whether it's me finding parallels where there really isn't, or whether there's something there.
Okay, so let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay, here's Raphael. Who is Raphael? Well, Raphael is mentioned, in Tobit as a spirit, as a one of the 7 angels that go before the Lord. And Raphael actually bound Satan in the desert. Bound Satan, or an evil spirit, Asmodeus, something like that.
Not to be confused with Amadeus.
So this is just the one where the voice of Gabriel and of Raphael and diverse angels all declare in their dispensation. So showing that Joseph Smith talked about Raphael.
So Dan, I got to ask you a question. Given this huge gap in any mention of Raphael between section 128 and the parchment, is it possible? I know anything's possible. What do you think the likelihood is that Joseph Smith is there referencing the parchment itself and his money digging activity, since we have no reference to Raphael being involved in any way in the restoration?
Well, I think he's very aware of the 7 angels. in Judaism and Kabbalah and all that stuff. I don't know.
Is it like he's trying to shoot?
I wouldn't go so far as to say he's referencing this parchment, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Is it like he's trying to say that they were all involved, and I don't have the stories on it, but I can drop the names now?
What?
I mean, it's like angelic name dropping.
Oh, I see.
That's what I hear him doing.
I see.
Everybody was involved in this. All the important angels were involved. I didn't mention them. I don't have a story associated with them, but it's 1842, and I'm going to tell you that I heard their voices and other diverse angels, which may be the other four, in addition to Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, all declaring their dispensation. And of course, there's 7 angels, which lines up with 7 dispensations.
Yeah. Interesting. Don't you think? So the Book of Tobit, he says when he appears, I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels, which present the prayers of the saints and which go in and out before the glory of the Holy One. And then Barrett says, Raphael did apprehend the demon called Asmodeus and bound him in the wilderness of the Upper Egypt. So I think Raphael was attractive to the creator of the Holiness to the Lord, Layman, because of binding evil spirits.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. By the way, just for reference for anybody who doesn't know, the name Raphael as an angel, or any name, doesn't occur in the Bible as we have it today with the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament or the Greek Scriptures, but it does appear that one time that Dan's been referring to in the Apocrypha, in those 14 or so intertestamental books, which generally we don't have in our Bibles today, not in the LDS version, but which were present in Joseph Smith's Bible, from which he was doing the Joseph Smith translation.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a big help there with providing that context.
Dan, can I ask you something?
I forgot to mention.
Reading that part about binding the spirit, Upper Egypt, Raphael.
Yeah.
And why this might be attractive to whoever made this parchment. Did that just occur to you?
No.
Okay, you've had that idea before?
Yeah, that's why I say that this parchment, the Holiness to the Lord, is not to summon good spirits, it's to protect against evil spirits. Because when you go money digging, you're afraid of the guardian spirit, which is usually an evil spirit guarding the treasure, is going to attack. And you draw the magic circle, right? Mm-hmm. And you go around it like Joseph Smith Sr. saying an incantation, and that you're supposed to be protected, and it's supposed to keep the evil spirit out of the circle so that you can dig and get the treasure. And you would be concerned. That's why you're wearing the layman around your neck. Yeah. When you're doing all this stuff to protect yourself against the spirits that are guarding these treasures.
Okay. So that makes sense to me that it would fit right in with the treasure digging activities.
Yeah.
Just to show you, in the Magus, for instance, that page, if you look at the bottom, it says something about the magic circle.
Yeah.
So that is the page, and some of those shapes are the ones we went over earlier, the 12-star.
Yeah.
Which sort of is a star. Well,
that one looks like a Star of David. Mm-hmm. That's a Seal of Solomon. That's one of the things that's supposed to appear on a parchment.
Can I see the Seal of Solomon? Because Kwaku mentioned that during
the
debate.
you can. So you see that.
Which one is it here?
Yeah.
Let me do this. I'm going to make.
Is it the ring?
You see on the right, there's that Raphael star.
Yes.
And above it's a regular star. And then on the other side of the page is a Seal of Solomon. That's what's supposed to be on the parchment, but you can replace it with the 12-pointed star.
Okay, so the Seal of Solomon is the 6-pointed star, a Star of David, with additional accoutrements.
Yeah, and so the Raphael star is double that.
I know how you love big words, Bill. I thought
I'm gonna add that one
to no additional charge.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
so really, the Seal of Solomon is the Star of David.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So are we ready to go to the next slide? All right.
Okay, this one is a page from Barrett. It's kind of a key page. It shows the 7 planets. And those red lines are in that star, 12-pointed star. Those are all the Hebrew words that they chose to put in the star. And at the bottom is the numbers of Mars, and then you see Adonai. And it's written in Hebrew. You can't exactly make it out maybe, but on the far right is the Hebrew of Adonai, and a number 65. And this is where you get into numerology. In Hebrew, if you assign numbers to the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, A's 1, B's 2, so on, and then you get up to 10, then it goes to 20, then it goes to 30, and so on. If you take each Hebrew letter in the name Adonai, it adds up to 65. So the same thing with all those names. And you'll see that Mars is kind of key to this 12-pointed star. So it has Adonai, but if at the top of the next page, you'll see on page 147, Graphiel, the intelligence of Mars.
I want to ask you, what does
300
that mean?
And something.
Because Graphiel, that's the name of an angel,
Graphiel.
Correct?
That's the good, angel or good spirit of Mars.
What does intelligence mean in that context? That it's a good spirit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one it says just the spirit of Mars, like when you might assume that that's a good thing, but it's not. A spirit is those familiar spirits, right? And it's the evil spirit, the evil spirit of Mars. I can't read it, but
so it looks like Barzabel.
There you go.
Barzabel is the spirit of Mars. Graphiel is the intelligence of Mars. It appears from this that there is some intended difference between the intelligence of Mars and the spirit of Mars.
The intelligence
for each of them. There's intelligence of the sun, spirit of the sun. Yeah.
So look at the one for Venus. Ketamil, the spirit of Venus. That's a bad spirit. That shouldn't be on the parchment, really, but it is. So Barrett says you shouldn't put evil spirits on the parchment unless you intend some sort of evil, So I
summoning them, perhaps.
Maybe they did intend evil.
This might be the reason the treasure sunk into the earth every time. Like they might have messed up the spell.
They
did it wrong,
man. Oh my gosh! If only they.
Okay. So, and the other ones are just holy names, and we'll see how it works out with that star. Keep going.
Dan, I do want you to address something about the difference between intelligence and spirit, and whether that may have played any role in Joseph Smith's development of this idea of calling spirits intelligences in later writings. I'm thinking of Abraham chapter 3, as well as the King Follett Discourse.
Yeah, we were talking about that on the phone, and I thought that was a good possibility that when the Book of Abraham talks about the council and calls them the intelligences, I think there's a good chance that it was influenced by magic lore of the 7 intelligences of the 7 planets. The term intelligences, though, is also used by Thomas Dick and others for spirit, interchangeably with spirit. It seems like, anyway. So I think it's something to think about.
Can you give me What's your best guess on how familiar Joseph would be with, say, the Magus book by Barrett? Would this been something that he would, again, I'm asking you to guess because we don't really have conclusive evidence other than these parchments. We know it's in the family. Would Joseph been familiar with all of this? Understanding
I don't know how familiar.
Planets and understanding that kind of stuff.
Well, I think some of his information probably came from smaller books or handwritten copies. There's a lot of what they call grimoires, which are handwritten collections of these kinds of spell books that just compile one after the other. And some of these books are made from grimoires, because some of these publications just one after the other give spells. This spell for this, a spell for that. A lot of spells deal with love and theft. Love and theft, to quote Dylan.
But we do know that regardless of what Joseph Smith knew about these grimoires or these particular books, that he did have a Jupiter talisman, which he kept as some kind of perhaps lucky / magical piece.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the tradition attached to the object, and that's provenance as much you'll get from a lot of artifactual type things. A lot of objects that come from the past don't come with a history, a pedigree, or anything, a provenance with them. Right. But there's a family tradition, and I think if you want to doubt it, I mean, they came with a bunch of other things owned by Hiram Smith. So the assumption is that these parchments were together with all those other objects being handed down from one patriarch to the next. Mm-hmm. Anyway, here we have those Hebrew words you can see in the transliterations of them. Graphiel is on the east point, and Kedemel is on the south point. You can see Adonai is right below Raphael. So I think you get an idea what they're doing. They're trying to put down good spirits. They have an evil spirit in there for some reason. I don't know the thinking on that, but
it looks like Hod appears twice.
Yeah.
What does Hod mean?
I don't know. It's considered a holy name in that Barrett's chart.
Okay. And the same with Vow and Doni?
Yeah, all of them.
El Ab?
Yeah.
Okay.
And these are the ones they chose out of all the ones they could have. But you can see it's kind of evenly, they drew on it evenly from each planet.
Oh, I see. Right. They wanted representation. Is it of all 7 planets that are represented in this 12-pointed star?
Yeah. So, we'll go on to the next one.
There's a fullness of magic in that 12-pointed star.
There's all the names, the numbers, and they add up to 687. And then Quinn believed that 687, for some reason, this number meant something and was relates to the creator of the parchment, but I seriously doubt it.
As I understand it, Quinn and you as well have tried to see if you could come up with somebody whose name would equal 687, and it's been unsuccessful.
Quinn tried, but the thing is that that's not the intention. That's not Barrett's intention in his list and numbers and things, to try to find somebody whose name also, if you take the Latin, Agrippa made a list of Latin letters and numbered equivalents, and then that's what Quinn used to try to find someone who may have been the creator of the layman. Well, that's not why Barrett put these numbers on these names. These are just come from Jewish numerology and the Kabbalah kind of thinking. And it's a number. It's a nice number. You might use that number if you were, doing the lottery or something. But it didn't have any connection to using. You just randomly chose. How could you take your name, whatever number yours added up to? Joseph Smith added up to 400 and something, not even close.
Yeah.
How can you take your name and then look at this list and try to find an exact match that would add up to the numbers that your name added up to? It's just not practical, and it's not. It was never intended to be done that way.
It reminds me of the old saying: sometimes a Graphael is just a Graphael.
Yeah.
I am seeing HOD, H-O-D, at least in the magic world, stands for the tree of life. It's the sphere of solar level of consciousness. It's the realm of ideas and communication, of magic contracts and travel. The idea of reality creating has its basis in this sphere and the skill to manifest and unmanifest things at will.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool. What does nuance HOD mean?
Nuance HOD. This is not nuance chode, yeah.
Okay. Hey, Dan, this is fascinating. Can we hit the high points of the next slides and let some people call in? Because I know there's lots of people out there who want to ask you some questions.
Oh, that would be cool. So here's the names of the two. We won't get into what they represent. It's just all similar of protection and things like that.
Palipa and Nalga. They're two more angels, right?
Yeah. Pele Pale. Pele Pale.
You got to say the name right, otherwise they get really surly.
No, Pele Ale. Palai Pa. Nalga. So those are symbols that are have meanings attached to them according to Sibley and Scott. Okay, go to the next one. We're going to go fast. See, there they are. There's a long definition for it. For this is the Nalga symbol. The top one is the one for the holiness to the Lord, and the St. Peter bind them has another version of it. You can see over here on this side, Scott and Sibley have the same, a little different, and it's closer to Sibley again.
Okay.
Closer.
Yep.
Okay, go. Next one.
So Nalga is the third good angel of ceremonial magic.
Yeah.
And Palipa is the second of 7 angels of ceremonial magic. So they've got number 2 and number 3 in there. What happened to number 1?
We'll get to one more, at least. Okay. So this is Scott's definition of the Palipa. And what I was going to discuss was, is it for virgins only? Which Quinn thought it was for virgins, and therefore it would date the holiness to the Lord parchment before 1827 when Joseph Smith got married. But I don't believe it's strictly for virgins, and that's why I quote Scott. It teacheth all the names and powers of angels and gives holy charms against the assaults of evil demons. That's important. What it's for.
Yes.
Okay, next. No, I'm talking about the IHS is in hoc signo or Jesus hominum salvator. In this sign conquer, which is what Constantine and his crusaders, that when Constantine had a vision of the cross, this is what was in hoc signo Wincus is what he said. In this sign conquer. So they put the cross on their shields, right?
Yes.
And then the other one was then later in the medieval period, it turned into Jesus, Savior of men. But
with the same initials.
Yeah.
So that's what you think the IHS above this.
There was I and J were not distinguished in Latin at that time.
Okay.
So it's an IHS. That's the way they interpreted IHS anyway. Okay. Go. You can go. Okay. So this is the filler signs in gold. They're basically the zodiac signs, the planet signs. Okay. Go.
Can I just say something that struck me is that right above the centerpiece, that 12-pointed star, just to the north of it. Oh, that's not the part, but right to the north of it. Because I had never really seen it before, but it's this huge, it's rather large sign of, it looks like either 21 or capital letter 4, excuse me, there are no capitals, or a letter 4, but that's the sign of Jupiter right there,
yes,
correct?
That's the sign of Jupiter, which is that Jupiter talisman that we'll look at in a moment.
Yes,
and it looks sort of like a 4. So it looks sort of like a 4. And that's a good thing to point out too, that shape, for when we discuss those mysterious characters.
Where is the next part that has the 3 crosses in gold? Where is that located?
Yeah, the next but so below the circle, and next to the 12-pointed star are 3 crosses. Like
because I had never seen those before either.
For the crucifixion, or Golgotha, or Calvary.
But the next one is a close-up of that where I can see the.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill. Oh, there they are. They're in gold, so it's kind of hard to see. Oh, okay. And that's the way they are. And so what we're dealing with is a Christian. Well, we got holiness to the Lord written on it, right. But we're dealing with a Christian document. This is Christian or white magic, not black magic, not satanic magic. And this is the way they looked at it. These Agrippa, Barrett, Sibley, they all believed that this was part of Christianity. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And this is where we get to our mysterious characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Quinn counted 9, but I counted the one with the parentheses around the capital I looking as 1.
Number 2,
and
correct, in yours.
Pardon?
Number 2 in your list. There's 1
yes,
and
number
2.
2.
And 2 is the one you're talking about that you count the 3 elements as 1 figure.
Yeah.
And Michael Quinn counted as 3 separate.
Yeah. So I was looking at these, and so 7. Once I got 7, I go, well, that's a very important number in magic. It could be the 7 planets, the 7 spirits, the 7 angels. So I said, well, it looks more like it's going for planets, because number 6 looks like a moon, right?
Yes.
And number 5, kind of reminiscent of that 4 we were just talking about, Jupiter. So I'm going, well, and see that number 2 looks like a sun sign. Okay, go to the next slide. It might help too. Because I think the next one has the symbols. There we are. So see number 2, I have the sun, and it's a dot in a circle. I go, well, somebody's trying to disguise it, that maybe they got creative and made that sign instead. Then I thought, well, maybe the sideways S could stand for Saturn, and the 2 M's, sideways M's on the beginning and the end, could be Mars and Mercury.
Okay.
This is all me speculating before I discovered.
This is one of the mysteries of this parchment, isn't it?
Yeah. What are these? What is being represented? And then I said that, maybe that slash, the last thing, was Venus, like one side of the V shaped, thing. Just being creative here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Then I found this book called The High German Fortune Teller. And it's only 24 pages. It's a chapbook. It's what is known as a chapbook. And on page 22 were these characters in a spell against thieves. and it says, write these characters on a parchment, a virgin parchment, a new parchment, or whatever, a fair parchment. I think that's the word. And write these characters. Well, so there's those two sideways M's facing the right direction, same direction. Then number 2 is those parentheses, but it has a dash.
Right. By the way, Dan, am I understanding it correctly that this, this horizontal piece above we know comes from one of the magic parchments?
Yeah, those are the magic characters those 7 characters we were just looking at.
And the line below comes from this pamphlet.
From this pamphlet. And the date of this pamphlet.
The date. I'll let you look it up while I mention that when they printed the pamphlet, they had to use numbers and signs that were available to them with their typesetting, right?
Yes.
In order to approximate these other symbols. So on the parchment, they're drawn in, but here they had to be used with type that already existed. So therefore, they took an M, put it on the side for the first one, took the same M probably, put it on the other side for the 7th one.
Yeah.
And everything else in there, we can maybe see things that we've seen in other printed materials.
It's about 17. There's no date on it, is when it got published. But the best guess is 1780s.
Okay. So
how did you come across?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
How did you come across this book? Like, you just scrolling through eBay and you saw this for sale and you thought, man, this might have a connection to Joseph Smith. Like, I'm always curious how people find their cool things.
Well, this happened to be a book that was published recently by a scholar that had several texts in it. Spells. It was a collection of spells. And he couldn't reproduce these characters, but he was describing them. And I go, that sounds familiar. I want to see what the characters look like. Because he said that he mentioned some sideways. He put some substitutes in there, and he says in a footnote that these are really an original sideways M's, I think. And I said, oh, sideways M's. So let's see what it looks like. And he referred me to this book, that book there, and I went hunting for it, and I found it. And I found it, and I looked at it, and I go, wow. So that's how I found it. It was quite by accident.
You're just out reading a bunch of old magic spell books.
Yeah, well, it was a current scholar that had reproduced them.
LDS scholar, or just like
just a scholar of esoterica.
Yeah.
So I contacted Joseph Peterson at esoterica.com to ask him if these characters looked familiar to him, since he was so familiar with magic texts, because that's what his esoterica.com has a collection of all these texts in electronic version. And he didn't recognize them. So I thought, well, I think maybe whoever made the parchment made up the characters, because Joe Smith is known for making up characters, So are many magicians. There's a lot of magic scripts out there that are just made up. They're all made up, but a lot of them made up various alphabets, like John Dee's Enochian alphabet and others. Well, anyway, so go to the next slide. And so these are those typographical characters for using in footnotes, right?
Right. So
the first one is a section sign. Mm-hmm. This appears a lot in legal writings. So those are two forms of double S's put together in different ways, but they're both double S's, which is like that S up above. And it is the one that is from that high German fortune telling book, uses the double S right where the S is on the Holiness to the Lord parchment. So it's a double S. It's like an S, a double S. Then there's the next one is a sign that they use for parallel. These, parallel texts that they used to use in these old books. Which
Dan,
is
can
the
I ask you
one?
a question?
Yes, which corresponds to that V-shaped thing, or what I thought was a V-shaped. It corresponds to that line, the slanted line.
Top line from the Holiness to the Lord parchment number 3, the sideways S.
Yeah.
On the right side of the sideways S, does it have a tail that ends in a cross?
Yes. No. The cross is the object below that. I thought that too for a while. But if I had all three of them right up here, you would see right away that it's not attached.
Okay.
Anyway, so the parallel line corresponds to that slanted line on the Holiness to the Lord. Then we have what would correspond to the four-shaped. That four-shaped thing's sort of like Jupiter, but it's also an alchemy sign for steel. The alchemy thing is nearly identical to that. But then the moon-shaped thing corresponds to a pilcrow, which is a paragraph sign. It's a curved paragraph sign, not the one you're used to, like a P, backwards P sign for paragraphs nowadays. But in the old typescript, they used that curved one. And that's what's being depicted in the center one. So there you have it. So I believe that's the source. So some sort of, I don't know how exactly it attaches to this Holiness to the Lord thing. What, there's what the branches of this tree document bush might look like, where exactly each one fits into this. Okay, so go to the next one, which is to find out a thief. And you'll see that on the left of it are those signs. But it says put down the minute when the goods were stolen and the planet ruling the day. So this done, put down the following characters on a fair piece of parchment. There they are. So turn round thrice, and if you hear no news of the thief in 24 hours, as 10 to 1 you will, prick the parchment full of holes and hang it up the chimney, where the heat of the fire may a little scorch it, and the thief will be so restless that he will bring back the goods.
I'm getting the image of a voodoo doll being held over a fire.
Yeah. Strange, huh? And I was wondering if this instruction here, some kind of roundabout way, relates to that third parchment being covered with soot.
Yeah. Here, folks, is the beginning of Mormonism. Right here. Superstition meets Christianity.
Yeah.
Treasure digging. Yeah. Here we go.
Why didn't Joseph Smith use this to get the 116 freaking pages back, man?
Yeah, so that's the point. There's all this stuff about thieves, protecting against evil spirits. It's I'll talk about it towards the end, what it all means. Probably. Okay, let's keep going.
Probably.
So here we see the St. Peter bind them on the left-hand side, and some of the same characters or symbols appear on that parchment as well. Next slide. Now, and that's the back. Bind evildoers from me. Not doors, but doers.
Yeah, when you fold it into quarters, all those bind evildoers from me overlap each other.
There you are.
Every one of those would be right on top of themselves. Yeah.
Yep. Just like those little things we made when we were kids. They open up
Yeah.
and have different little.
Yeah, that was
I could never
thinking the
make
same
those.
thing.
The girls in my
girls
class,
did.
they were great at making those. I was terrible. I could never make one to save my soul.
It sucked to know that your fate was in the hands of that random chance of that thing,
Oh, absolutely. By the way, what's your favorite number, Bill?
4.
What's your
1,
favorite-
2, 3, 4.
What's your favorite color?
Yeah, blue.
Okay, next slide. That's St. Peter bind them, and it says St. Peter bind them, St. Peter bind them, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. May every hair of their head be as heavy as a millstone that desires to set fire or destroy this body. Fail not, fail not, fail not. Those 3 fail nots
Always
is not
in
necessarily
threes.
what it says, but catch them. Well, it might be those. Next slide.
Yeah, like Bill was saying, and I think half facetiously, I mean, Pele Ale was repeated 3 times
Yeah.
for magical incantatory effect.
So
in the
this is a
endowment.
close up
Only
of
repeated twice.
What?
Said
Oh, geez.
and then
Oh.
repeated twice. You can't
Yeah,
repeat
there you go.
something out only the first time. The first time you
Okay.
say it.
Good point. Good point. I stand corrected.
God is wrong.
So I put fail not, but it could easily be, if you look really close at the handwriting, Latin fiat et, or fiat et, let it be. If it's one word, he will make a noise, which kind of makes sense with the remainder, catch them. So I'm not sure. It's maybe we'll find a document that has it written more clearly or something someday. Okay, next one. Here's a round one. Down. Okay, so you get that. That's what we're going to talk about. Go to the next one.
Can I just ask really quick? The image next to it, is that just somebody trying to render what was on the original?
Yes,
Okay.
that's Mark Elwood looking at it real carefully. A digital version, blowing it up and
You have so many gifted people in this space. I love it.
trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty close rendering. There's a Latin words around the immediate inside of the circle. It's four Latin phrases, and then it's an English spell going around, and then there's a pentagram and a sun with a sun symbol in the middle, and over here we'll see it's a Jubilees.
Gesundheit. I'm sorry. What did you say? Jubilees?
Yeah, it's a symbol. It's a Jubilees. It's a symbol for one of the angels.
Okay. Oh, the bottom right. That really intricate thing that looks like Mousetrap game I had when I was a kid.
Weird thingy. Yeah, that game. I remember that.
Hey, Dan, I want to ask you this. Did you mention it, or are you saving it, about the fact that it looks like this document had soot on it at one point, and that's why somebody took turpentine to it or whatever cleansing agent, which obliterated it?
Which, by the way,
you already cross-referenced that with the instruction about putting it up the chimney if it doesn't work?
I mentioned that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we emphasize that.
Yeah.
Because if it is soot,
it might be related somehow.
If it is soot, and if it was obtained by putting it up the chimney, then it sounds like, well, are there holes punched in it, pricked in it?
No.
That's the next question, right?
There are holes, but the holes occur at the folds.
Okay.
So, okay, next. Okay, the one on the left is a similar one found in Utah, Bountiful, Utah, in the 1880s.
Found?
Well, it was above the door frame of the home of I had his name here, Harrison. Or
so this is on the inside of the house. Is this a parchment, or is it actually painted on the wall?
It's a parchment.
So it's a parchment that was put above the door on the interior of the house?
This is from Quinn's book. Also had this picture in it, and James Henry James Harrison, a Bountiful, Utah English convert who immigrated in the 1860s, and it was discovered in the 1880s above the door frame in the his Bountiful home in Bountiful, Utah. So,
what's the point in putting it above the door frame?
Okay, so that's to ward off evil spirits.
So it's like the idea of having an inverted horseshoe over your door frame to keep evil people or evil spirits from entering.
A charm to drive away spirits that haunt any house.
What is it says around the circle? Is that English?
Okay, go to the next one. Oh, there's a Bangladesh. See, so there's on the right are Scott and Sibley. They have those symbols, and there it is, right on that parchment.
Okay.
Okay,
and once again, is that an angel? That's an angel named Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it had, well, I think I let's see.
And here's a description of that symbol.
Oh, that's the meaning. That's the meaning of, if you want to know, we won't read this, but if you want to know.
Sword.
Yeah, Bangladesh, distinguished in the dominion of thrones, as the appointed guardian of all public and national enterprises where the good of society and the honor of God are unitedly concerned. He is delineated in all the brightness of a celestial messenger, bearing a flaming sword girded about the loins, with a helmet on his head. And this is the magical character by which he is distinguished, and which is worn by many as a lamen or layman round the neck for a preservative against putrid infection and sudden death.
Now, some people have found that interesting in light of Alvin. And
the putrid infection part?
Yeah.
The calomel?
Yeah, so there might be a connection to that.
Well, it didn't work very well for Alvin.
Okay, so let's go to the next one.
You guys don't think that's strange that you have a messenger with a flaming sword there, huh?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right in the same sentence next to the loins.
Celestial loins, yeah.
Bearing a flaming sword girded about the loins.
Yeah.
With a helmet on his head.
Just parallelomania.
More mode.
Okay, so here's the Latin phrases that are around the immediately around the circle.
Okay.
The other parts mean? Yeah, they're phrases that come out of the Bible, actually. So the next slide might tell you what the phrases mean in Latin. There you are. Latin translation and the scripture of each of those. Well, there's 3 phrases, actually, not 4. They divided them wrong, but there they are.
So Psalms, the translation of the Latin is every spirit praises the Lord from Psalm 150, verse 6. The second is they have Moses and the prophets from Luke 16 and 29.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like something from a parable of Lazarus and a rich man, maybe. And God will arise and his enemies be scattered is the translation of the third Latin phrase, which is from Psalm 68, verse 1.
Thanks. Yeah, that's it. So that's the Latin phrase around that. Okay, go to the next thing. We'll see the English part. This is the text that goes around it. Unto God's gracious mercy and protection, we now commit thee. Lord, bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. And Lord, lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace both now and forevermore. Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah.
Could you pronounce that with an English accent, Dan?
I can't. I've tried when I was in England and I could never do it. I tried as hard as I could, but I can never get it out. And amen, amen, amen. So you can do it.
Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah.
That's Monty Python.
I was just telling my wife, this roast lamb is good enough for Jehovah.
Yeah, you can't say Jehovah. This is where you get stoned.
Are there any women in the crowd?
No.
I mean, no.
As it turns out, that if you go to the next slide, it's right out of the English prayer book. Church of England prayer
I
book.
heard that phrase like at funerals, but I'm sure it's used in other contexts. It's a very famous passage.
It's like a
from
prayer. Yeah. So no big deal. That's 1824. So it's around, and it's a very familiar prayer. Okay, go to the next one. Dagger time.
Whoa.
How many dogs' throats do you think that cut? How many sheep and dog jugulars has that thing been across?
I think that might be one of the reasons, because it has a brown handle too. But instead of a black and white ceremonial dagger.
Mm-hmm.
So the next slide, we'll see that there's markings on the blade.
Now that's a dagger. Where's this dagger coming from, Dan?
Dagger. They use it. What do you mean? It's in the collection with the parchments. It's handed down from the Smith family.
Okay.
This is right there, Eldred G. Smith. And a lot of times they thought this was a Masonic knife or something. But you can compare there to Barrett, 1801. The same symbol appears there for Mars, the seal of Mars.
So that whole thing is the seal of Mars?
Yep.
Okay, and Mars is the god of war.
Mars is the god of war, and not surprising that it would be on a weapon.
Yes, right. Maybe to imbue it with greater power.
Yeah. Well, Quinn argued that it was Joseph Smith Sr.'s birth year sign, because 1771 was the year of Mars, but hardly anybody knew the year sign. Actual year signs were determined by the hour you were born, but these year signs 1771 would be very hard to get that information. First of all, I could only find it in Joseph Smith's day in a Dutch book, So more likely, when Barrett talks about etching a sword with these signs, it's not determined by the birth year of the person doing the etching or using the weapon. It's just a talisman to help anybody that's going to war or is in danger or wants more power with their weapon. It's not limited to people that was born in 1771 and every 7 years after that.
Do we see a connection between symbols used in Masonry and the symbols used in magic? In other words, to posit that this was connected to Masonry, I would want to see some overlap, and if not, then I would want.
They were mistaken. They were just guessing.
Right. Gotcha. So yeah, this would essentially be
because they knew Joe Smith was a Mason, but they didn't know he was a magician too.
He wasn't very good at either.
So next slide. On the other side are these symbols.
Oh.
So there's a symbol of Mars and Scorpio. And you see over there in Barrett's book, that symbol in red there is the intelligence of Mars symbol.
Yes.
And right below all of them is the Hebrew word for Adonai.
Okay. So do you think that this might have been used for magical purposes, this dagger?
Yeah. Quinn thought it was used to draw magic circles. And
you'd have to get down on your hands and knees, and
yeah,
I mean, it's a dagger, right?
So that one picture that Bill showed had a sword, and it's usually you used a sword to do that, or a wand, a long wand, to draw these magic circles. It's not unknown that they used knives to draw magic circles. Yeah, there you are. So see that, what you can see that sword
right there, right in the middle.
And the word on it is written Agla. Remember the Agla on that shield.
Yeah.
So I call it an Agla sword, or an Agla knife even. These are ceremonial sword and knife. This doesn't have Agla on it. It's not what you would expect for a dagger to be used in drawing magic circles.
Would Smith have understood that this was Hebrew? I mean, again, I'm just throwing out lots of things that we can't prove or show, but it strikes me that if Joseph recognized that there was Hebrew connected to his magic, it might also prompt him to be interested in Hebrew, which he was in Kirtland, for instance.
Yeah, well, they thought Hebrew was the original language, and a lot of this stuff in Barrett especially is coming from the Kabbalah, from Hebrew magic, or the occult,
Jewish
whatever you want to call it.
mysticism.
But yeah, so this dagger, though, what could it be used for? It could be used for protection. If a person was seriously frightened for his life and maybe carried something like this to help him defend himself, or possibly I asked Quinn if he ever thought it could be used for animal sacrifice, and he said to me, well, I didn't want to mention that because he felt that he had enough trouble already trying to establish the magic connections to the Smiths and their money digging. So I didn't want to bring that up in his book.
Now, this is fascinating to me, the story that you talked to D. Michael Quinn about his book, Mormonism and the Magic Worldview.
Yeah.
And based on what he told you, it sounds to me like he was willing to censor himself to some degree in order to make his book less controversial.
Yeah. That's funny, huh?
Yeah.
By the way, the footnotes in that book are as good as the book,
Yeah. So next slide.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This is Barrett talking about when the seal and intelligence of Mars is engraven on an iron plate or sword, it makes a man potent in war and judgment and petitions, and terrible to his enemies. The other one is Capricorn, is the other sign. Gives it similar for security, and so it's the kind of thing you would want to put on your weapon. So to me, it might fall into a period in Joseph Smith's life where he needed protection. That's a hint.
So like every day?
That's a hint. Well, yeah. But so, okay, go to the next slide. And there we are, the animal sacrifice. There's the sheep, and next to it is that quote from William Stafford about a sheep being led around the circle bleeding. And he just says it was one of his sheep, and he says that I believe this is the only time they ever made money digging a profitable business. So
can I read this, Dan?
Could that dagger have been used? Huh?
I was just going to read this entire quote if that's okay with you.
Oh, if you want. I thought
this is from Eberty Howe. I'm sorry. Eberty Howe, Mormonism Unveiled. And this is from an affidavit that was written by who, Stafford?
William Stafford.
And William
lived
Stafford
about
was
a mile south of the Smiths and participated in money digging on their property. So
Yes.
he's an eyewitness.
Okay, and this is what he said. That a black sheep should be taken onto the ground where the treasures were concealed. Okay, so this is part of the methodology of finding treasure, right?
Yeah.
That a black sheep should be taken onto the ground where the treasures were concealed. And of course, you'd find out where they were by someone who had the gift of finding out where the treasures are buried, such as Joseph Smith with his seer stone. Then goes on, that after cutting its throat, it should be led around a circle while bleeding. This being done, the wrath of the evil spirit would be appeased. The treasures could then be obtained, and my share of them was to be fourfold. To gratify my curiosity, I let them have a large, fat sheep. They afterwards informed me that the sheep was killed pursuant to commandment, but as there was some mistake in the process, it did not have the desired effect. This, I believe, he concludes, is the only time they ever made money digging a profitable business.
And isn't he saying that the fact that he let one of his sheep into their hands, that's how they actually got profitable?
Yeah, they got a sheep.
Such a bad money digger.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. It's getting late.
The jokes just keep getting better from here, folks.
Yeah. All right. We'll go to the next thing. Okay. So there's that Jupiter sign that you were mentioning before. You can see over on the side the shape of it a little bit better there. And it's large. And this is what Quinn thought. It was large, and it's than the other signs, larger than the other signs, and in a central place, a prominent position. He speculated that it was because of Joseph Smith being a Jupiter. And now he's on firmer ground here than he was with Mars, because Jupiter happens to be in Joseph Smith's birth sign in one of the three decans of Capricorn.
And he was a Capricorn.
He was a Capricorn, December 23rd. And so there's three decans in each zodiac sign, 10 degrees of each 30 degrees. And he is of the first decan is Jupiter in his sign. So and that was well known and discussed in all these books, that decans were significant, and it very easily found. I have like pictures of charts where it just charts out everybody's decan and things like that. Not a difficult thing to find out. So he's on firmer ground when he makes that connection. So let's look at the next slide.
Can we, before we go there, one more question? I'm sorry. Bottom center, the winged symbol of either the second or the third angel. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
IHS
Nalga.
above it.
Nalga.
Right, and the IHS above it, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
Over there to the left of IHS and above the left wing, is that an Ankh in gold?
Are you talking about the fertility sign of the Egyptians?
Yeah, or the eternal life sign, yeah.
Or Venus?
I don't know. Does Venus look like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be Venus as opposed to an Ankh?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to the next sign. So this is that zodiac wheel I was talking about, and shows Joseph Smith's first decan of Capricorn, 22nd to the 31st of December, ruled by Jupiter, Joe Smith Jr. There we are.
So there's actually a real hit there. That's really solid, isn't it?
Yeah, if you find that symbol, the larger nature of it and the positioning of it be significant, so that's a kind of a subjective judgment to make about that symbol. If you see that as significant and it matches up, then you do have kind of a hit, if you want to call it that.
Well, the reason I mention that, of course, is because not only is that Jupiter sign in gold and rather large on the parchment, it also ends up showing up in the talisman. The Jupiter talisman.
That's what we're going to look at next. So let's go to there we are. So that's the Joe Smith Jupiter talisman. And this Charles Bideman, the first guy at the top on the right, he's the son of Louis Bideman, Emma Smith's second husband. And he's the one that was showing the Jupiter talisman around and telling people that it was a piece of metal found in the pocket of the prophet when he was killed, about the size of $1. This is Henry D. Moyle, that middle guy, picture of the middle guy. This is Henry D. Moyle writing about his meeting with Charles Bideman in 1902. Whether the talisman was in Joe Smith's pocket or not, I'm not so sure, but
it had there's a hole drilled into the top, which would make it suitable for hanging about the neck.
Right. Pendant.
It doesn't mean it couldn't be in his pocket as well, but.
Well, right. Then John Henry Smith, about the same time, talks about this a metal said to have been carved by Joseph Smith with this inscription on it: confirms O Deus potentissimus, something like that.
And that's the Latin phrase which above was translated into English as, "O God, make me all powerful and many."
Yes, that's pretty good memory, but I show that late in the next slide or next one after that. I'm not sure. So go ahead. Oh, this is where the talisman ended up. Wilfred C. Wood bought that talisman from Chauncey Bideman and put it in his museum.
Wood? Is this Wilfred Wood related to the Wilfred Wood who made the death mask of Joseph and Hiram? So Wilfred Wood is the person who fabricated the death mask.
Philo Dibble, I thought, made the death mask. There might have been other ones made from the Dibble ones, so it could be. I mean, they had them there in the museum, and that's the museum there in Bountiful, Utah. Part of it. There's another structure connected with it. I'm just
going to throw it over here.
So when we were there, we asked to look at it, but they wouldn't show it to us.
So yeah, this is the same guy. So yes, Dibble made the death mask, but Wilfred Wood later on fabricates a bunch of them, and in fact, a set of them ended up in Family Pawn, which is why I know the name, which is why it strikes me. But
you should go to his museum. Is amazing up there in Bountiful, Utah. But he bought it. He bought a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's the same guy that is the same guy that did this. Joe Smith Begins his work. Oh my
gosh, I recognize that.
Yeah, he's the same guy, Wilfred C. Wood, right?
That's where I found out shortly after my mission that the section in the Doctrine and Covenants that talks about Oliver Cowdery having the gift of Aaron was actually originally the gift of working with the rod.
Yeah.
In the 1833 Book of Commandments, which is replicated in that, correct?
Yes. And he does in that same volume's 1835 Doctrine and Covenants as well. And then he has another volume. It's the 1830 Book of Mormon. And that's what I got those when I was a teenager. So.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to laugh out loud. Not in derision, but in awe of you, Dan.
Well,
yes, I was studying trigonometry at the age of 11.
Not me. No. Okay, so that's where they're supposedly still there.
Okay,
but I didn't get confirmation because they wouldn't show it to me.
And on the Jupiter talisman, the bottom part, those all those signs relate to Jupiter. I see the 4 there, or the 21.
Let's go. I have it mapped out. Okay, so that's the same talisman right out of Barrett's 1801 book.
Okay.
Except the magic table is actual numbers. On Joseph Smith's talisman, it's Hebrew letters, but they all add up to 34, no matter which way you try to add them up. And 4 times 34 is 136, which is the number at the bottom of that top part.
Oh, if you were to turn it upside down.
Yeah.
Or
so it's
at least reversed.
136 is the magic number for Jupiter.
Oh.
Okay, so go to the next slide.
I can see how if you got too deep into this, you could actually lose your mind.
Yeah. And so these are from Barrett, the sign of Jupiter, the intelligence of Jupiter, and what is it? The spirit of Jupiter. Okay, so next. There we got it all worked out. There's that confirmo o Dios potentissimus, something like that. So there's a seal, the sign of Jupiter, intelligence of Jupiter, and then there's that phrase around the outside. Next. Oh, so these are Hebrew words around the edges of the other side that match Barrett's Jupiter, right? One of the 7 planets and those numbers, and the holy name is Abba, which is 4. Then there's El Ab, which is 34. That's the other magic number. 4 times 34 is 136. Jophiel, I guess, the intelligence of Jupiter.
Okay.
So you see, they're playing with numbers there.
Yeah, and El Ab would be Father God.
That sounds right to me. Okay, go next. So you see here the El Ab, though, on the Joseph Smith talisman is missing a letter.
And it looks like there's a space where it should be.
Yeah.
Because it's on the left.
So there's always some reason why it never works.
I can see the flaw right there. If he had this on him at Carthage, this is why he did not get protected.
So there's the other Hebrew words in the sign of Jupiter, that 4-shaped looking thing.
Yes.
Okay, next.
You can see why the idea of garments being magical, this idea that magic protection and spells, and you can just see the church is trying to get away from all of that. But on some level, magic is absolutely tied in knots to the beginning of Mormonism.
Absolutely. And I would even go further and say it's tied in knots to the beginning of Christianity as well.
Yeah, totally.
It's just there's so much about Christianity that we take for granted because it's repeated so much that we don't even think about this idea of there being power in the name of Jesus. That evil spirits can be thwarted and driven away by invoking the power in the name of Jesus, that we have sins that are washed from us through the power of his blood. Yeah. And if you can step back for a second and try and look at it as if you haven't been a Christian your whole life or haven't been exposed to Christianity your whole life, you can look at that and say, that sounds kind of magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that page from Barrett's book there explains what the Jupiter talisman's good for. If this is engraven on a plate of silver with Jupiter being powerful and ruling in the heavens, it conduces to gain riches and favor, love, peace, and concord, and to appease enemies and to confirm honors, dignities, and counsels. So if you want that, you can wear it.
Well, wouldn't anybody want that?
I don't know. There's other talismans you could choose from.
I guess so, but that seems pretty awesome. It's almost like you're asking, okay, if you could have a superpower, one superpower, what would it be?
Riches.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe turning invisible.
Okay.
By the way, can I just tell you something, Dan? Okay, this is a personal story. I used to
we
be
only have
excited
2 more
by things.
slides, everybody.
Okay, so this is about turning invisible by magic. So when I'm a kid, I'm into these little magic books, and by magic I mean like black magic. I have no idea.
Really?
Yes, but I'm not really reading them, but I'm scanning one that's too thick for me to read, and I'm not interested that much. But I find a spell that has to do with turning invisible. And I thought, that's the spell, okay? None of this love crap. I'm like, 10, 11 years old. I'm not interested in the love spells. I want to turn invisible. And they had a spell, and I remember this spell, which I never actually did because it was immediately impossible for me to do, because the first thing you need is a dead guy. And this dead person has to have been buried, and having the coins over the eyes, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember everything about the spell, but I remember that it had to do with digging this person up, taking one of those coins off of his eyes, and then maybe it was by the dark of the moon or some certain time, taking that coin and placing it under your tongue. And you would be rendered invisible. So I thought it was a great idea, but I couldn't even get, off first base on that one.
Really? Well, it wasn't meant to be.
No. So I've never turned invisible, at least not intentionally.
You and Joseph Smith both thinking about digging up dead bodies, huh? And taking parts to perform spells.
Are you talking about Alvin's hand?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of Beatles references tonight. There's Let It Be.
Let
That
It
was
Be.
one of the things that you thought, Let It Be.
Coins on the Eyes is George Harrison's song. That's what
Obla-dee, obla-da. Life Goes On, brah. And now you're talking about I Want to Hold
Taxman.
I want to hold your hand.
No, the George
Joseph
Harrison
too,
Taxman
Alvin.
song in the Coins on the Eyes is a reference in there. Yeah. Anyway, so the last slide, I think.
Everything I know about Mormonism, I learned from the Beatles.
Dad, look, Alvin's hand.
Okay, and there's D. Michael Quinn.
D. Michael Quinn. Yeah.
So what is this slide?
Okay, well, this slide is about Mercury, and that Raphael is attached to Mercury, and these are the 5 weeks in a year where Mercury presides. So Mike Quinn had this idea that it was the holiness to the Lord parchment was to invoke or summon good spirits, and it would only be usable when Mercury was in power, because the Raphael's name being in the center of that star in the center of the parchment. And these are the weeks. And so notice that the 12th through the 21st of September is included. And so he thought that that's when Moroni came and appeared to Joseph Smith on the 21st, the very last minute of Mercury's power. And it would be in 1823. And so he associated it with the 1823 appearance of the angel to Joseph Smith. And so I have challenged that because of the shield that we talked about being in an 1825 book is one reason. Other reason is that I see the parchments as not a one-time thing that was only good for this week. And the last night he happens to have his appearance of the angel, and I see the parchment more as a protection against evil spirits. So if it has to be after 1825, I don't see it being attached to the Josiah Stoll episode, because that's too soon after the publication of this book, because that would be October, November of 1825, and that book came out towards the end of that year. And so I associate it more, one possibility, is the 1827 visit to the hill, when Joseph Smith would want protection against the spirit, being attacked by the spirit, because the last time he had been there, which was before 1824. That is the first time he went there, he got attacked.
Yeah, he got clobbered.
Yeah, supposedly.
And knocked several rods.
Right. And even in Oliver Cowdery's version, he got shocked and thrown back 3 times, and which made him think of the enchantments that he heard so much about,
Mm-hmm.
So, and also...
I always mix up those trips to the hill. I can't really tell one year from the next, so I have to distinguish them by who he was supposed to take, right? Like one year he's supposed to take Alvin, another year he's supposed to take Samuel Lawrence, another year he's supposed to take Emma. Anyway, we can move on.
And I think Dan's of the opinion that several of those yearly visits were manufactured in hindsight.
Yeah. So, it's to connect the 1827 visit to the earlier visits, as there was some kind of continuity between the first visit and the last visit. So my opinion is that he went in 1823 and couldn't get the plates, and the excuse he gave was he needs to bring Alvin the next year.
And he took his eyes off the plates, right?
Yeah.
Take your eye off.
So he did something wrong. According to magic lore, if you do something wrong and you don't follow the instructions precisely, it won't work. But so he has to go the next year, 1824, and I believe he came home and said, I was supposed to bring Alvin, but Alvin's dead, so I can't get the plates. And
I didn't realize that till I got to the top of the hill.
Well, yeah.
Meanwhile, Dad's exhuming the body.
So I think that might be his way of not giving up. Yeah. After his son gave him that excuse of why he couldn't get the plates. And I think that's where it ended.
Right, until 1827.
Until 1827. It was over. He failed in getting this treasure like so many other treasures.
Right.
There wasn't coming back every year. So
you think that he really didn't go there in September of 1825 and in September of 1826, but those were rewritten back into the story to give it some kind of reason that there's these 3-year gaps.
Yeah. Why a 4-year? Why did you have to wait 4 years?
Just to say it. Oh, go ahead. Just finish that thought, by the way.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Just because it's a tangent, it's not meaningful to what we're talking about here, but just because it strikes me, I just want to connect the audience to the story that's kind of crazy along with these kind of trips to the hill, is that Joseph Smith's child was supposed to translate the plates first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the kid was born stillborn or whatever, or Joseph Smith III, or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so
there's all these
people
crazy
of Harmony
stories.
are going, well, your son was supposed to translate the plates, and what happened? They mocked him because of that. Because what God allowed your son to...
You have a look on your face.
I'm not as familiar with this as you. I may have heard it once, but it's striking me as new right now.
Yeah.
But if you don't need to look at the plates to translate them, why do you have to have somebody who's alive to do the translating?
Well, I think the idea is if you put the translation in the act of a child, then it looks that much more marvelous. Not that the kid would have had anything to do with it, but you produce suddenly these, pages of manuscript, and you say the little guy back there did it. It sounds really magical.
You just write them in crayon and you're ready to go.
Well, it would be a delay tactic for one, but
yes.
So also association with the 1827 time period is Joseph Smith's former money digging companions were trying to get the plates from him, and so that might be the context for the St. Peter bind them parchment,
right,
against thieves, and it would protect the plates against the money diggers trying to take them from him. Plus, there's that worry about, remember, the trying to destroy his body, and that might give a context to the dagger.
Trying to destroy whose body?
Who the St. Peter bind them.
Right.
Had that phrase in there about wanting to burn and destroy this body.
Okay.
Bind those who, make their hair as heavy as a millstone, and bind them from burning and trying to destroy this body.
Dan,
that might be the context for the dagger.
At some point around an hour or an hour and a half ago, you had mentioned some connection you were going to make in the future about the 116 pages, and I don't know if you've done that yet.
No, I was going to make the connection to the dagger for protection.
Okay.
And the thieves.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking about thieves before and the soot and all that. So that's the context, I think, for the St. Peter bind them parchment, is the attempt to steal the plates from Joseph Smith.
That makes sense.
That's one possibility. And we can't nail it down, not maybe as what Quinn tried to do, but it's.
I mentioned to you yesterday that the more I look at this, the more it reminds me of evangelical Christians or Christians of other stripes trying to make sense out of the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
And everybody's all over the board on their interpretations, but they're still trying to interpret the same passages.
Well, you get into the realm of symbols, and so symbols are interchangeable and fluid. It's a subjective interpretation.
So, Dan, what was that connection you were going to make with 116 pages?
No, there wasn't. But
there wasn't?
Well, so that would...
Did you replay the tape on that, Maven?
So that would happen. The loss of the 116 pages would be July of 1828.
I remember earlier you made a joke, RFM, about why didn't they use the lost item finding magic spell to find the 116 pages?
Right. And that was in that context that I thought Dan said, I'm going to make a point about that later on.
Oh, I think he was talking about something else.
I might have misunderstood what you were meaning.
I was really looking forward to that too.
Well, you try it.
I think I did it. That was my contribution an hour and a half ago.
Okay. One more. Kind of put a bow on it. This is kind of put a bow on it, like kind of thing. Let's see. Maybe I have it here. I can read it easier from here. Let's see. No sooner was it known that I had the plates than the most strenuous exertions, were used to get them from me. Every stratagem that could be invented was resorted to for that purpose. For the persecution came more bitter and severe than before, and multitudes were on the alert continually to get them from me if possible. But by the wisdom of God, they remained in my hands. Perhaps the wisdom of God in doing everything in his power to keep them included these magic parchments.
Interesting. Because if that's so, then he'd be referring to the parchments as the wisdom of God.
So that's why I'm focusing on this period of when he went to the hill, he got them, they're trying to steal them. Then he takes off and he goes to Pennsylvania. This is all in 1827, and the loss of the 116 pages is like July of 1827. Bill
has put up a meme on the board for your benefit, Dan.
It's magic.
It says, I'm not saying it's magic, but it's magic.
Yeah.
Ledger domain.
Sleight of hand. The faculty of Abrac.
Yeah. Okay, that's my presentation. Is anybody still here?
Bravo. There are 337 hardy souls who are still with us.
Wow.
And that's about as many Browns fans as there are in the country too.
Well, we do have a few callers on the line. And the number I'll put one more caller in the bank if somebody wants to call. 662-667.
They've probably been holding forever. Sorry.
6667. No biggie. So let's do this. So
I hope it was worth it.
Yeah, so
Totally
we've got,
worth
looks like
it.
Walt
I
maybe
loved
is
it.
the first caller. Walt, are you there? Hello? Walt. Okay, I'm going to put Walt back on mute for a moment. We'll go to the other
Walt?
one.
Walt?
Yeah.
Was he calling in the cryogenics lab?
Said this was Walt or Walt's. Let's
Walt
try. Hello, is this Molly? Hello?
They fell asleep.
I mean, the one was on hold for like 58 minutes, the other one for 21. So they might have dozed off.
Oh my gosh. I hope it wasn't long distance.
Hello, Molly.
Molly?
Jay, I'm going to try.
Isn't there anyone?
Give me just a second here. Oop, let me try this again. All right. So, Molly, are you there? No. Let's try Walt.
This is the best part of the show right now.
Yeah. And then we've got another call calling in, so we can do that one. Hello, Walt? All right. Nope. So let's go to this one.
This is Walt. I have a question for Dan Vogel.
Hey, caller. I'm skipping the screening part. What's the name?
Could you see my lips moving?
Man, maybe it's me. I don't think so. I've got all.
Can you hear me?
Now let's try. Okay, let me put you back on hold for just a moment. I'm going to go to the first caller because it might have been me. All right. One moment, my friend. All right.
I'm hanging up on everybody tonight.
No, that was me. So let's try this again. Let's go to. All right, Walt, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, I am so sorry, my friend. You were probably panicking.
Walt.
Why can't Bill hear me? So go ahead, my friend.
No worries. I can hear the other callers speak too. So.
Can Walt speak
anyway,
up?
Yeah, I can try.
That's better. Thank you, Walt.
Yeah, no problem. So my question is, just out of curiosity, whether any of these characters or symbols on these parchments are similar to those on the characters sheet that Joseph Smith prepared. I know that there's been connecting them to letters and numbers in the English alphabet, but we've been doing that with these symbols tonight too. Like, the Jupiter looks like a 4, etc. So just curiosity if there's any connection there.
I didn't find any. I tried, but I couldn't find anything that was significant.
The Anton characters is what he's talking about?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When we were talking about different alphabets and making up letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't find any that matched. I tried, but
thank you, Walt.
Nothing important.
So you're saying the Anton manuscript is really Reformed Egyptian, Dan?
Well, what's Reformed Egyptian?
Right.
Hey, don't turn that question back on me.
Is this Molly?
It's like regular Egyptian, just reformed.
Is this Molly?
This is Ghazala Ali.
Oh, God.
Ghazala Ali.
It dictated that different. Go ahead, my friend.
The son of Muhammad Ali.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Hey, that's what's funny about that is last time I called in, you had a different name for me too, so it must come through really weird.
Yeah.
Was it Raphael?
Yeah, Ghazala Ali is from the Order of Amen.
Jubilee Days.
For the true and living Mormons. I've met Dan before. I was showing him my Mormon magic, Reformed Egyptian that I did with I've been messing around with it, but I was calling in because of the High German Fortune Teller book. I have been able to take that and find parallels to the Reformed Egyptian, which is really interesting. But it's cool that you found that with those characters that were actually typographically the letters that were put into that book, because that means somewhere there's a handwritten characters that, don't you think? There has to be handwritten characters somewhere in some grimoire that was copied out of.
Yeah. No, I don't think the actual spell had those characters. It had characters that the typesetter probably couldn't reproduce, and so he used substitutes.
Yeah.
But whoever did the Holiness to the Lord parchment seems to have copied the printed one and didn't have access to what the original ones, whatever they are, look like. And there are other spells where they did similar things, but they used different characters, substitute characters in different spells in that same book.
Oh, that's so cool. That's what I love about this stuff, because they're really just memes or a game of telephone or Chinese whispers or something, like that Jupiter talisman's a perfect example where you can see the line is broken in one of the characters, and so we can tell what book that was probably taken because it was a misprint in the book and then was carried on over to that talisman or amulet. So really great episode. I've been really enjoying it, and it's a great extension to what you were doing a couple days ago there, Dan. I really enjoy it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Gaslam.
Cool.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for
calling.
All right. And then the final call of the night, Tim, you're there?
Hey, Dan. All I got to say is kudos, man. What? You blew my mind tonight.
Is this Tim Rathbone?
Art. I hope Art will.
This is Tim Rathbone, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You cracked him like a nut, Dan.
You have
I
blown
recognize
my
his voice.
mind, man. Oh my God!
Thank
kudos,
you,
man. You're gonna.
Yeah,
blow
but are you sure it was just me that blew your mind?
Yes.
Okay, Tim.
Without any help.
Are you there, Tim?
Yes,
Tim?
I'm here.
Okay, I hate to break into this mutual admiration society, but I'm glad you enjoyed the show. What was it you found the most mind-blowing?
Every moment. the
Alvin, mushrooms.
When to get Alvin. That too. Well, you tied so many things together that Art and me and others have struggled to pull together. The stuff in the megas. But what about the fifth book of Moses? Have you looked in there for any symbols, anything?
Well, I've gone through. You're talking about the fifth and sixth books of Moses kind of thing, and I've gone through a lot of stuff, especially on the esoterica.com site has all this stuff on it. So
okay,
I'm going to look that up right now.
Well,
let's see.
Joseph Peterson called
erotica.com.
What is it?
Did you say erotica.com?
Hang on a second. I'm going to sign out of that one.
Yeah. Well, just bookmark it first.
You guys, I forget what he calls it. He has a weird name for
the sixth book of Moses.
Yeah, fifth and sixth.
I know about the fifth. I've never heard of the sixth.
Book of Moses.
Yeah,
they're Jewish magic books.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these entities that these guys ran into they actually do admit that they inhale smoke that is like laced with drugs in some of these magic ceremonies,
Opium and stuff.
I know Bryce Blankenagel and a couple of other guys done quite a bit of work on trying to posit that in early Mormonism that Joseph Smith is using psychedelics and conscious altering tools in order to get people to have spiritual experiences. And the evidence isn't I wouldn't call it concrete at all, but there are some connections there that are at least plausible.
Well, I don't find it very persuasive, but the esoteric kind of people, the occultists, actually talk about doing it. in their circles. And then having summoning these spirits that come. And some of these guys are under the influence of breathing it in.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim, glad you liked tonight's show. Thanks for calling in. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Okay, may I say one more thing? Art de Hoyos did find the source for the Anton manuscript characters.
Who did?
He did find it.
Who?
Art de Hoyos.
Art de Hoyos?
Art de Hoyos.
Is that the Central America
Art
people
de Hoyos
with the sword of labor?
No, he's the Masonic scholar.
He's the Grand Archivist of the Masons back in Washington, D.C.
Can you send me a link to that? Like, if you're being serious, I'd like to.
I am skeptical. I'm skeptical, Tim. What are you talking about? You mean
just a moment?
Scattered. Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. He found the source for some of the characters on the Anton. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it. It's just as valid as comparing it to English.
Gotcha. So parallelomania.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. But it's possible that this book, and I don't remember the title of it. I used to have a copy of it, but sadly all my stuff's been lost. But he did find the source for the characters, and we published a paper on it, but I can't find my copy, and his got lost. So I know he sent some to a bunch of people, so maybe somebody out there in the ether has got a copy of it.
If you do, let us know.
Well, I have something I think you're talking about.
Do you have Robert Smith's Oracles, Talisman, and Penna Sophia about Joseph Smith? Remember when he published that back in 86 or 87? You might want to look at that too.
Who?
Bob Smith, the guy that worked for Farm.
Oh, Robert
Bob
Smith?
Smith or Robert Smith?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that worked for Farm.
Yeah.
What was the name of the article?
Robert Smith. Yeah.
It's a book. He published like 200 pages on Oracle, Talisman, and Penna Sophia with Joseph Smith. And then there's thing by I can't remember his name. Anyway, there's a lot of other stuff. But I just want to congratulate you. I mean,
thank you.
I gotta get your book. I gotta get your book now.
Yeah, get it.
I'm gonna call Art in the morning, and we're gonna talk about this. I mean, you just blew me away. You tied so many things together that we've often wondered about, and now you hit the nail on the head, and you're just gonna blow it out of the water. I can't wait to react.
Did you see the video, Tim, on YouTube? My presentation of the whole thing.
Well, I watched you on Carrie on Sunday night. Well, I wasn't home, but I watched it yesterday, and then I watched your presentation. Yeah, but you went into a lot more detail tonight.
Yeah, go to my channel, Early Mormonism Explained, and there's a new video there called Joseph Smith the Necromancer.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but you explained some things tonight that you didn't explain in there. I mean, that blew my mind away, but you did it more tonight with some other things that you added. But anyway, I just want to congratulate you.
Well, thank you very much.
Are you going to do anything at MHA?
No, I won't be going.
I
won't be going anywhere this year. I'll be making the circuit next year, though.
All right. Man. I can't congratulate you enough, my friend.
Thanks, Tim. Okay. I'm going to let you go, my friend.
Thanks you very much. Okay, bye.
You've got some big fans.
Dan, how does that
there,
make you feel to be adulated so thoroughly?
Well, it's better than being ignored. So, no, I really appreciate people's interest. It's a subject I, of course, love to study, and I've studied all my life. And I want to communicate it as much as I can to other people, and things I found, all the time I spent trying to dig up this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of climb up this high mountain, and the higher you get, the more you can see, and you want to share it. So I'm really happy to be able to be on your show, to be able to do that.
Well, it is our honor to have you on our show. And congratulations again on this incredible accomplishment of getting this book published.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how many hours and hundreds of hours and thousands of hours of work and research that this book represents on your part, Mr. Vogel.
Yes, that 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
If you want to be good at something, you have to spend 10,000 hours to get good at whatever it is.
Jacob Hansen.
What's that?
I said, that's right, Jacob Hansen.
Yeah. So that's it.
Where did Jacob Hansen come from?
Just that 10,000 hours needs to be spent before you assume you understand Mormonism even moderately well.
Oh, as opposed
that's
to the 3
hours
hours he's put into it?
Yeah.
It's a lot of hours.
Jacob.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours.
Well, you know that old story about, the violinist, the prodigy guy, and somebody says, I'd give my life to play like that. And he goes, I did.
Ooh, wow. Slap me upside the head. I thought you were going to go with the guy who's looking for directions in New York City and says, hey, how do I get to Carnegie Hall?
I thought we were going to tell the joke about the 10-inch pianist.
Oh, my gosh.
Just a little guy who played the piano.
I can't even believe that you're even going there.
It's getting late, man.
Did you hear the one about the streaker in church?
You're blowing Tim's mind.
They caught him by the organ.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Let's wrap this up.
Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah.
All right. You guys have an awesome night, and I guess we'll call it, huh?
Thank you again, Dan, for being here tonight.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you, Bill, for doing such a great job with all the slides.
No problem.
We're doing the Brady Bunch opening with only half the kids.
I told my wife that roast lamb was good enough for Jehovah.